across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. Thank you to Julia. She's back on Monday, of course, right here on Talk. Loads to get through this afternoon. Keir Starmer backing that global net zero tax on shipping. So he's siding with the United Nations, defying warnings from Trump and the United States. Experts say the new levy will hike consumer prices by 10% and hit British industry hard. But Labour presses on. Even the Conservatives have rejected this costly net zero goal. What is our obsession with net zero? How do you explain this one? 0344 499 1000. Also this afternoon, Downing Street has stated that it would have been absurd for the Prime Minister to intervene in the China spy scandal as the case was a, quote, criminal matter. Now, this case involves a Chinese-owned company operating a secure Whitehall data hub, and it's now connected to the failed prosecution of alleged spies accused of passing information to Beijing. There's more than a little whiff of something not right on this. But what do we really know? Let's go back to basics. We'll explain exactly where this story started and what the significance today really is, particularly for Keir Starmer. And the Institute for Fiscal Studies has warned Rachel Reeves must show real courage in the budget or else Britain faces crippling tax hikes and drastic cuts. Labour promises to protect the big taxes, but with 22 billion quid plus needed, mounting debt and wafer-thin buffers, future tax rises look absolutely inevitable. All of that to come. 0344 499 1000. You can message on 87222. There's so much I don't understand. I think I probably speak for everybody on this one. I often refer to the cockeyed, confused world we live in, the unhinged and illogical nature of decision-making and government diktats. They're all over the place. A tsunami of unfathomable decisions and ideas that land on our collective desks on a daily basis. Now, I think it would be reasonable to say, wherever you sit on this debate, that top of the list of absolute arrant confusion is the religion that is net zero. And by the way, it is worth saying, I think like all of these things, if somebody actually explained in fine detail and produced evidence of all of the claims and potential pitfalls and hurdles and general doom that's coming our way, if that was laid out and it was quite clearly, you know, that this is a matter of fact, you know, you'd have to be a flat earther not to believe. Somebody did that, and we'd all go, OK, all right, I didn't know about it before, but now you've explained it, I get it. If somebody could do that, provide me with answers to some fairly obvious questions. So we learned today that Keir Starmer is going to back this global net zero tax on shipping. Donald Trump has said to neighbouring or allied countries, don't go anywhere near this. Starmer's gone, no, we're going to vote this week in favour of the proposals from the United Nations International Maritime Organization. Oh, God, you imagine working in that office. Who are going to impose a levy on ships that emit too much carbon dioxide. Now, this comes, of course, as we hear that the UK should be prepared to cope, did you see this headline, with weather extremes as a result of at least 2 Celsius of global warming by 2050. This is according to independent climate advisors. There's a title that's doing some heavy lifting. The independent climate advisors are coming to see you. Our country has not yet accepted or adapted to worsening weather extremes already occurring at current levels of warming, let alone what's expected to come. This is the Climate Change Committee, the CCC. They wrote this in a letter addressed to the government. Now, this rather kind of outlines my point on this one. 0344 499 1000. The lack of clarity in this area is off the scale. In fact, and I don't say this just to be smart, it's almost criminal it's almost criminal, the lack of clarity on something that is so life-changing and game-changing and expensive. The lack of clarity is in another stratosphere. CO2 emissions in the United Kingdom have dropped by a third in less than 20 years, in about 18 years, about a third. If you look across Europe as a whole, and that's a sizable chunk of the Western world, it is a similar figure. And the projections are that it will continue to drop. So what are we doing wrong? Now, if you look at how we manufacture these days, how we construct buildings, the care that is taken on environmental issues, if you look at the kind of cars we drive, electric cars are now through the roof, sales of those. If you look at the sort of industries we have, and more tellingly, the industries we no longer have, if you look at how we make things, how we recycle things, how we heat our homes, I mean, the whole place, everything is unrecognisable from what it was 20, 30 years ago. Unrecognisable. So it's getting better. And as it gets better, and this is the bit that I can't get my head around, as it gets better, we're told it's getting worse. Now, there's the central point to the confusion. 0344 499 1000. What is the obsession with net zero? So if we are doing everything and it's getting worse, what's the answer then? Now, I remember interviewing somebody a long while ago. You interview so many people in this job, I can't remember who it was or specifically when it was. But their argument was, the CO2 issue, the pollution, is the manifestation of stuff we did decades ago. It's all up there and it's coming floating down on us and cursing us. Meteorologically speaking, we might as well be in flipping hell for what's going to happen. Now, if it's in the past, what do we do about that? Is there an answer to that? Is there something we can physically do if it's already there? This is not stuff we're pumping up there. This is stuff that's already up there. You see my point? There is confusion. What is our obsession with net zero? Fortunately, we're joined now by a meteorologist, Peter Barnes, who's with us in the studio, political strategist and all-round good guy. By the way, I should add, Peter, America are not involved in these goals for net zero.
No.
China are actually, if you look at the wording of China, although they're ahead of the game in what they do, they are looking at carbon neutral, which is a slightly different thing.
Yes, definitely. By the way, you fix your net zero problem by fixing your China problem. The reason we have this obsession with it is it's because it's been infected into our system by the Chinese. Our entire economy is built around the green economy, which is all funded through China and Chinese money. So what has happened is they've taken control of the academy. So they've got their kind of what they call the Confucius Institutes, these kind of benign organisations that are supposed to make
the Confucius Institute. It sounds so worthy.
Oh, it does really, doesn't it? But it's they kind of normalise Beijing's narrative of net zero is really important. And they control the grants for funding for academics, so they push it in one direction. What has happened is that has then gone into the corporate world, the legal world, the political world, everything. And it's all geared everything to one thing, that China makes the money. We suffer, China makes the money. This is a long-term plan that's been in place for about 20, 30 years. So
really?
If not longer, some people argue it's been going since the Cultural Revolution, this idea of controlling kind of stealth by takeover, and takeover by stealth, sorry. And I think this is what's really important when we talk about net zero, is that, like you said, things seem to be getting better, but we're told they're getting worse. That's not an accident.
That's the bit.
That's the bit that doesn't make sense. And the reason that the kind of the most fervent people get they're catastrophizing is because they have to lurch to the extremes to justify the fact that things are getting better, but we're told that they're worse. So this is the point. Otherwise, why I hate the catastrophizing argument, because it shows that these people are what the Soviet Union called useful idiots. They've been pumped with this ideology, this idea, and it's not by accident. It's been done deliberately, so that their narrative is continually repeated in the media, or more importantly, it's done in television shows, it's done in films, it's done in movies, things where mass media that everybody consumes. So we are consistently told you've got to do everything for the environment. Nobody is denying climate change and all this stuff, but it is the crisis bit of it, with the urgency, the way that we've got to do everything, no matter what the cost. That's not the accident. That is the manipulation of there's science, there's manipulation of the kind of narratives, and we see it all the time. It's not just China that do it when it comes to net zero. Say, for example, Iran have been doing it when it's come to the Israel-Gaza stuff. You want to know who's funding the hate marches here in London? I'll give you money. It starts with an I and it ends in an N. It's called Iran.
Yeah.
Foreign involvement and influence in our system is rife, and we are seeing that this week and through the China trial and everything
I love
else.
this analysis.
This is the thing. It's not mine. This has been a long-term theory, and it's starting to kind of show a lot of truth to it. At first, it was considered a bit of a conspiracy because, you know, most people aren't that competent, and then you realise, oh no, it's the Chinese government. Of course, they could be that competent because they are that competent.
And the thing I really resent is at about 6:45 in the morning today, when I should be munching on my Kellogg's, I'm down a rabbit hole looking up CO2 emissions across the planet over the last 20, 30 years. I'm trying to read chemical symbols that I've never seen in my life when I'm looking at this stuff. And hence the reason why I looked at those figures, that we've improved by about a third in less than 20 years. Unrecognisable. And that's the direction of travel. And simultaneously, Ed Miliband, another stand-up, saying it's getting so much worse. It's worth having a little listen to Donald Trump here, because we remember what he said about climate change. He wasn't messing around. This is just a few weeks ago now. Trump on the green issue.
Climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong.
Yeah, that's a big one, actually. The fact that all these predictions. I mean, when I was at school, I was told that the Maldives wouldn't exist by now, and yet it's still there. You know, this is the point, is that all these major predictions, they've yet to kind of really come to fruition. Obviously, we've seen changing weather, so that's climate change. It is, again, it is the crisis aspect that we really have to deal with the political nature of it, and it is used as a political football. Because the narrative of, what about your kids? How do you not want to save the planet? Is very difficult to argue against. Again, not an accident. It is like the kind of the ultimate. You don't want to protect the world for your children. How awful of you! And
well, because it is the ultimate, and it's also the ultimate sort of socialist stroke Marxist argument, isn't it? Because of course, if you come from that part of the political spectrum, you need an enemy, and what greater enemy than the end of the planet? I mean, the end of the planet, the self-flagellation involved.
Oh, that
in
is
all
a big factor that is actually done through left-wing agendas. Is because you have what's known as the perpetual outrage. So if you notice, it's the same people that are concerned about Gaza, are concerned about net zero, that are concerned about this, that. It's the same people. And what you do is, one of the bases of totalitarianism, actually, is you keep the idea of a perpetual revolution. There's always something next. There's always something to protest about. And net zero is just the latest one. Well, there will be something next.
I mean, that is 1984. There's always a war going
always
on,
a war. There's always a war.
And with this, I mentioned in the intro there, Peter, that this idea that somebody had said to me, actually, when I put that forward, why are we, we're doing amazing things, the planet is cleaner, everybody supports that, that's great, and if there are alternative ways of doing things that are better, and ultimately if they're cheaper, we all tick that box and we love it. So why are we told it's getting worse when it's demonstrably getting better? And then this argument comes through, because all the CO2s from years ago, industrial revolution times, it was all up there, stuck and trapped into, I don't know where, but in a cloud somewhere. And now it's all bursting open onto us. Well, if that is the case, then surely that's beyond our capability to control.
Welcome to the concept of original sin. The one thing you can't get away from. The religious aspect of it is there. You see it in the slavery argument with reparations. You've got to pay for the sins of your father. And that's the narrative yet again, with the same people pushing the same kind of argument.
But if we've got 12 trillion tons of CO2 or whatever it is washing around the place and making the planet hot, I don't think there's anything we can do about that now, is there, other than sort of cover the entire planet in a big umbrella?
Well, we tried that, didn't we? We wanted to block out the sky and the sun or something not so long ago with this seeding and all the rest of it. But again, it's ramped up and catastrophized. And like what they do is, when you look at all the environmental reports put out by COP and all the rest of it, the worst one is just one of 6 or 7 models. What they do is they pick the very worst one and they make, well, this is going to happen.
And the worst scenario within that worst one.
What has happened each time is actually the one where technology and investment sensibly has led to the least problematic outcome. And that's what actually happens. But they need to keep this narrative going, so they automatically launch to the worst case scenario.
And I can remember being at school when the issue of climate came up, not climate change or environment,
Global warming.
just general climate. And the talk was, I remember the teacher saying, oh, you know, years ago in the southern England, there were big vineyards because it was so much hotter back then. And there'll be a time when it'll become hotter again. But nobody at that stage in school was talking about it being a human issue or an environment. There was no cause about it. It was a meteorological argument.
Yeah.
That's what the planet does. Does anyone seriously think that if humans never existed on this planet, that the climate would be static for 10 million years?
I've got to say, it's this idea of climate change. Well, yes, the climate changes. That's why we don't call it that anymore.
It's called
we call
the weather.
Yes, we used to call it global warming, and then everyone noticed that actually we don't mind warmer weather. So this is the thing, the language changes, the concepts change, but the principle is always the same, is that actually it is used to bring in control through state governments using a left-wing agenda.
Let's move to this story, Peter. China accessed UK classified secrets for years via a Chinese-owned data hub with vast amounts of sensitive material reportedly compromised. The government has tightened security of foreign deals after warnings over the Chinese espionage risks. Conservative MP Tom Tugendhat spoke this morning on this very issue. Here he is.
My home has been broken into, my files have been ransacked, somebody has been put into my office by a hostile state, and two parties are playing politics with it. This is national security of the United Kingdom, and yet here we have two individuals seeking to extract information from us. And the government's response is not, as mine was, do everything you can to make sure the prosecution works, but no, process. Well, who the hell's side are you on? This isn't about the bureaucracy, this is about leadership. We're not sent here to be civil servants, we're sent here to lead the country and to make decisions.
Great last line there. We're not sent here to be civil servants, which is, I think, how governments tend to run these days, you know. That was Tom Tugendhat in fine form. I mean, what are we making of this? It's easy to lose track of, you know, what this is really about. I think a lot of people sort of gloss over a little bit.
The way I'd look at this, I've dealt with, unfortunately, I had to deal with China in private companies and all the rest of it. But if the migrant crisis is a paper cut, China is an open heart surgery. It will make everything else we've talked about in the last 10 years irrelevant. Their infection into our finances, into our economy, into the defence sector, into the data hubs, into everything is out of control and probably past the point of being able to turn it back. China, if it chose to, can give this country what we call an economic heart attack because they control the access routes in and out. They control the trade routes of the supply chain. We've allowed that to happen. So they might not have taken over a giant company, but what they did is they took over the little companies that feed into the giant one. So if they suddenly say, oh no, Britain can't build that, they'll watch the supply chain break down. More importantly, they control the ports, so that's the arteries. If they clog up the arteries, we get a heart attack. The damage they can inflict with one
They control the ports because they own the ports.
Yes, they own everything. Or they have part deals with them. They're in Hinkley Point, they're in Sizewell C, they're in everything, absolutely everything. I cannot stress just how important, and I'm so glad, in a way, that this has actually happened. The trial is rather an irrelevancy. It's a bit of political theatre. The issue, no matter what happens now, has not gone away. We have to deal with China. It is not an ally. It is not a friendly nation. It attacks us every single day. And, you know, we have to be resilient beyond a reproach. However, because of the state of the economy, we can't fight back. We can't do anything because we are basically indebted to China because, you know, we import double what we export to them. We got 100 billion in trade with them. It's out of control, and it has been for a very, very long time. And, you know, Tom Tugendhat, I'm a Tory, but he is as well to a degree, but he is bang on this, and he's been banging on about this issue for a long time. You know, the Labour Party slowed down the introduction of the foreign influence and registration schemes and all this stuff. They played politics with something beyond reproach, and it is absolutely astonishing to me what came out of number 10 over this issue. They played it the worst you could ever do.
Absolutely right, and it ain't over yet, by the way. And in the last 10-15 minutes, Sir Ken McCullum, the head of MI5, has said that China presents daily threats to UK security. Now, I think when he speaks, we had the former head, Sir Richard Dearlove of MI6 on earlier in the week. He made a similar point. He said that there wasn't an hour that would pass and there wasn't a file marked China on his desk.
So we now have the National Security and Infrastructure Act and the National Security Act, which is the update to the Official Security Act, because of China. because of, if you remember, I think it was her name, Christine, she was a lawyer and she got caught up in all of this. You know, the MI5 intervened and issued what they call an influence alert in Parliament saying there is Chinese spying going on in a Parliament. It was that serious. The Speaker of the House got up and declared it. That hasn't happened for decades.
Yeah.
And it just got swept away. Successive governments, political parties need to actually take a lot of accountability for the failure on this, but put everything to one side and fix this and fix it now.
Indeed. Our lines are open on all of this, whether it's China or that question of our obsession with net zero. Why are you not buying into the green argument? 0344 499 1000. Back with more from Peter Barnes in just a couple of moments. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 1. Let's have a look at this story. The IFS warning Rachel Reeves must be bold in the next budget or risk tax hikes and spending cuts. We've got a big old shortfall, somewhere between 22 billion and possibly 50 billion. But Rachel, from accounts, is still gloating over the economy growing. Let's have a listen to what the Chancellor says.
Britain's economy is growing again. We led the G7 in terms of growth in the first half of this year, and the IMF, who is the world's most foremost economic forecaster, has just revised up growth for the UK for a second time in a row. Over the last few months, incomes have been rising faster than inflation, but I know that the impact of price rises in the last few years is still taking its toll on people, and there's more that we need to do. More we need to do so that the economy and people's living standards don't feel so stuck. And that's why, as a government, we are working to keep inflation and interest rates as low as possible.
Right, I mean, inflation as low as possible. Well, that's not happening. No. And the economy is growing again. Well, it's growing by kind of the same rate as it was under Rishi Sunak, isn't it? There's nothing special happening here.
It was about 0.1% in August, roughly. And, you know, that's a revised estimate. So it's, again, if you can take your victory laps over that, I mean, how bad are things really? And I tell you what, start buying tin goods. I know I have. It's ridiculous. This is going to make 2008 look like child's play. Because, unfortunately, the woman we were trying to be bold has no idea what she's doing.
Do you think we're in that ballpark?
Oh, we were in that ballpark about 10 years ago. We've been consistently spending and spending and spending, printing money like it's going out of fashion. And then you had COVID and the furlough scheme, which just put everything on speed. It turned it up to 11. And here we are. This is the consequence of governments continually spending. What needs to happen, and this has come from the IFS as well, we need to have the most radical cuts and pullback in the disability welfare budget. That is the only way to save it. And unfortunately, the Labour Party have shown they're not only not willing to do it, they won't do it. So
we need the Chinese.
Unfortunately, but that is why we need the Chinese, because they won't make the decisions.
Indeed. Let's move to this story. MPs are slamming Keir Starmer for stalling the grooming gangs inquiry with no chair yet appointed. For 4 months, survivors and MPs warn justice is being denied and demand urgent, transparent action. Now let's have a listen then to the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls, Jess Phillips, announcing the inquiry what is now months ago.
Today I can announce that Operation Beacon Port has been established. It will be overseen by the National Crime Agency and delivered in partnership with policing, including the National Police Chiefs Council and the CSE Task Force and the Tackling Organised Exploitation Programme. For the very first time, this new national policing operation is bringing together all of the relevant policing partners under one operation to ensure a swift and specialist law enforcement response to grooming gang offending. This collaborative approach is ensuring that long-term investigative capability built across police and best practice is standard, ending an unacceptable postcode lottery for victims and survivors. This new national operation will eliminate inconsistencies on how cases are handled across forces and ensure that there is no hiding place for perpetrators.
That's what she said, no hiding places for perpetrators, but we don't have an inquiry.
No, talk about...
I thought we're nowhere near it, by the way.
Yeah, we were promised justice, and yet again it got delayed because of Labour incompetence. And more importantly, they don't want to do this. They really don't want to do this. It's around SW1 in Westminster, it is well known that this has been deliberately dragged out. You know, Dominic Grieve was rumoured to be the announcement, back in, I want to say, March? When you know, like, as a kind of forerunner and all that. And he said, no one has contacted me. He didn't know where the rumours had come from. It's absolutely ridiculous. And yet again, it's Jess Phillips who is trotted out there, because this is her thing, to be the face of it. Like, her political career is over. She is now the face of grooming gangs for the Labour Party. Again, Starmer's done this deliberately, so he's not the one getting the flack. She will be. You know, the same way that Reeves gets the flack for the economy, not him. It's strategically, it's quite a really smart play, but for the country, terrible. But this inquiry exists in name only. The survivors have the right to justice, and I do not trust bringing the people that should have been protecting young girls to be the markers of their own homework. In what world is that right? Correct. It should have the different police forces investigating different police forces. There's no way everybody should be working together, because they're the suspects. This is the thing. It's not just the gangs. It is the cover-up. It is the silencing. It is the going after the people brave enough to come forward. That is insidious and must be stamped out.
And you would have thought they could announce somebody to chair this thing.
Oh, I'm not being funny, but there's no way I would ever do it. You're done for. The press is never going to say you did enough. Victims will say you never did enough. The government will hang you out to dry if you get things wrong, and you're cannon fodder for an opposition. That's why they're having trouble.
Well, listen, on that point, Peter, thank you as ever. Peter Barnes with us, political strategist and political contributor to Hinton magazine as well. Check them out. Thank you to Peter. Over to you shortly. Couple of voices as well on the obsession, our obsession with net zero. Explain to me why you're buying into it rather than out of it. There might be some of you out there that ordinarily would go, no, not the kind of thing I'd normally subscribe to. But yeah, I'm well up there with the United Nations on their protestations and their issues around the doom that's coming our way. Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Lots to get through. So, Keir Starmer defying Trump by backing global net zero tax as the government is told to prepare for 2 Celsius warming by 2050. Keir Starmer is backing that. This is the United Nations. Labour support it. The Conservatives and Reform want to ditch net zero. Donald Trump, of course, we know about his recent comments. I played them a second ago. Let's have another listen. A reminder of what... Now, this is America we're talking about here, OK? So they're not exactly insignificant in the global story. This is what the president had to say to the United Nations.
Climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong.
Well, there it is. Biggest con job ever. Chris Morrison joins us in a moment. First, Alethea Warrington, Head of Aviation, Energy and Heat at Possible, the climate charity. Good afternoon to you, Alethea. I bet you love playing that clip. We didn't play it just because we knew you were coming on, but I can only imagine your reaction when you first heard him say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time he said it, is it?
True.
But I think the reaction from pretty much everyone at this point is the same. It's a broken record. I don't think anybody can take that seriously. I think the rest of us are pretty clear. We know that climate crisis is happening. We know we need action to prevent it. And I think the UK public are very much on board with that as well.
Well, I've got some news for you. We're going to be all right, Alethea. Do you know that? I mean, I'm not Donald Trump, by the way. I'm not going to say what he says. But I was just looking into the data this morning. I was looking how well we've done at CO2 emissions and the like over the last 10, 15, 20 years. I'm sure you're way across it ahead of me on this. But, you know, cutting them by, what, a third in 20 years or thereabouts. Europe, the size of that continent, doing something similar. And the direction of travel is looking pretty much the same as well. We're unrecognisable from how we were even a decade ago, let alone 2 decades ago. So it's good news all round. We're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's been huge steps forward. Things like renewable energy have hugely slashed emissions and also been a gigantic success story for the UK economy as well. That's absolutely the case. We should recognise everything that has been achieved, but we do need to go further, go faster as well.
How do we do that, though? Because, I mean, if you look at what is happening, you've got Ed Miliband, who's digging up half of Lincolnshire with a solar power, which is the biggest beneficiaries of that, of course, we were talking with our last guest, are the Chinese, so we're nicely financing the empire over there. But even if all of that worked, and that was, you know, I've always said, if you can get cleaner, freer, or cheaper energy, then everybody would say, yep, that's great. But there's obviously balances in how you achieve that. The cars we drive, the way we construct buildings, the way we heat our homes, our levels of recycling. Goodness me. I mean, what more should we be doing than we're currently doing?
I mean, I think we need a lot more action, a lot more ambition. I think we need a lot more on the most polluting companies, and also the most polluting individuals. Because if you look at who is actually producing emissions, the wealthiest few in our society, the millionaires, the billionaires, are producing a huge amount more than most people. So I think it's absolutely right that ordinary people should benefit from things like cheaper energy bills, warmer homes, better insulation, all of those measures. But we do need to go a lot faster. And I think going after the most polluting companies, the oil industry, and the wealthiest super polluters is something I'd really like to see from the
all of
government.
those. I mean, it's a cheap, easy way out, isn't it, to blame the rich people because they fly a bit more. I mean, not all of them fly.
I mean, sure, but if you look at the inequality that's baked into emissions, if you look at the people on the super yachts, the billionaires, the private jets, their emissions are just astronomically bigger than what most ordinary people will produce in a lifetime.
So we've got to stop flying.
Well, we've got to stop the millionaires flying around on private jets, flying in on their super yachts. I think that would be a really, really positive step forward.
But even there, you know, the capability around energising aeroplanes, I mean, electric planes are at some stage coming our way, so that ticks that box. And even in the meantime, you know, aviation is, you know, not what it was back in the day in terms of pollution. It's, you know, I would argue, or agree with you rather, that, you know, if you're looking at it solely on pollutants, then yeah, of course it does do that, but lots of things do. We're not going to die though, are we?
Well, I think the overall message is that we need a lot more action from a lot more sectors, and we need a lot more ambition to tackle the climate crisis. Because as the recent reports have come out this week, that warming is proceeding much more quickly than. So
why is that though? How could it be that we are doing more, but the problem's getting worse?
So I think there's sort of two sides to it. We are doing a lot more, absolutely. We're having more and more renewables, which is really, really positive. But at the same time, we are still continuing to produce and burn far too much fossil fuels. And we are having more and more clean energy. But the other side of that is that we also need to get off oil and gas as quickly as possible. So we need a lot more urgency and a lot more ambition.
But I mean, many people would listen to that and they might politely laugh, Alethea, in thinking, we look at what Ed Miliband announced yesterday in Lincolnshire. That's just one of, dozens, possibly hundreds of solar farms. And you're saying, which is kind of a bit of a left-wing trope, isn't it, that we're not doing enough. And even when we reach net zero, I might interview you then and you'll tell me we're still not doing enough.
So I think the things that the government are doing are good and should be recognised. So more solar panels, great, yeah, let's move forward with that. Let's have more clean energy. But the government is also doing incredibly dangerous and harmful things, like trying to push forward with a ridiculous number of airport expansions. They're trying to move forward with new oil and gas drilling, things like the Rosebank oil field, which is in contravention of their manifesto commitments to not allow more oil and gas drilling. And all the movement forward towards clean energy is absolutely fantastic.
It's a balance, Alethea, isn't it? You've got to go, OK, life does have to go. You know, China have recognised this. They are, although they're the chief recipients of all of these industries, because they're essentially the country that are behind it, the technology, if nothing else. Possibly the politics too, but certainly the technology. But China are running a kind of parallel thing, aren't they? They are chugging out God knows how much toxic guff into the atmosphere, like no other country, more than collectively most other countries. But they're also going, well, actually, we've just got to play this sensibly. We've got the solar panels, we've got the wind farms, we're happy to run with that. But in the meantime, we've also got a shed load of coal and oil, and we're going to use that as well.
So the problem is that the climate doesn't actually care how much solar, how much offshore wind we have. What the only thing that impacts the climate crisis, is how much oil and gas we're burning and pumping out into the atmosphere. And of course, the way to stop burning oil and gas is to, deliver alternatives. It's to have more clean energy, which is absolutely important. But it cannot be accompanied by continuing to burn oil.
But it's going to be, isn't it?
Because we will still face the worst impacts of the climate crisis.
But China aren't going to change what they're doing, and the United States aren't going to change, and India are a bit iffy on this one as well. So by your reckoning, we're doomed.
So I don't think we're doomed. I think we need a lot more action, particularly around the world. And one thing...
You're not going to get it from Donald Trump, are you?
Donald Trump is a massive outlier on climate.
Or Modi in India.
Donald Trump has been pushing backwards, but that is something that is going to harm the US economy. It's going to harm US consumers, because instead of powering forwards with clean, cheap, secure energy, he's trying to rush backwards to the dirty energy of the past, and that is something that is going to be harmful to the US economy. And look, you're right that we need a lot more action from governments around the world. You're right that we're not doing enough, but I think that what all governments need to do is show more ambition, more focus on ending oil and gas, because nothing else is going to be sufficient to tackle the climate crisis and protect people around the world from its impacts.
Alethea, thank you for your time. Alethea Warrington, Head of Aviation, Energy and Heat at Possible, the climate charity, with us on the programme. It's oil and gas, what's done it all. Turn off your fires, kids, and fire up your windmill. Otherwise, you're going to die, and so is your dog. Chris Morrison is the environment editor at the Daily Sceptic. Listening to all of that, Chris, I mean, you've had an education there. You've been schooled, have you not, by Alethea? It's oil and gas, and if we don't sort it out, we're knackered.
Well, I've been schooled by the Green Blob, because she works for a charity called Possible, and guess who funds that? It's the European Climate Foundation, which is one of the main vehicles for Christopher Holm, who was one of the funders originally of Extinction Rebellion, and pumps about $200-300 million into various global green activities, such as Alethea's company. So I think that follow the money. I don't quite go along with Pete, your previous guest, Pete Barnes. He's a little bit too Chinese conspiracy theory for my liking. This has been going on for years, this extreme environmentalism. He's absolutely right in that it's been taken over. It's essentially a hard left situation. It's an ability to command and control the commanding heights of the economy. And if you control energy, you control the commanding heights of the economy. But Alethea was talking about a climate crisis. There is no climate crisis. The Climate Change Committee has just come up with this latest letter, talking about all these extreme weathers. If you actually look at the observations, the weather is not getting extreme. There aren't, worldwide, even in this country, that there aren't any major upturns in storms, droughts. The IPCC has actually said this. They talk about extreme weather. What they're doing, of course, is they're just looking out the window and cherry picking one event. That is not science. That is advocacy. Advocacy that Alethea does through her own charity company, funded by the Green Blob money.
So in terms of, I mean, these words we're getting today, this 2 Celsius warming by 2050, that's going to completely scupper us all. You won't be growing any daffodils in your back garden anytime, Chris, according to this, because they'll shrivel up and die the minute the thing's planted. And in addition to that, of course, we've got boats now and shipping that's got to be subjected to a net zero tax. And according to Alethea, essentially, I think she didn't say it out loud, but she'd quite like to ban aeroplanes by the sounds of it. So, you've got to consider all of this. Otherwise we are doomed. I mean, is all of this invented, or is it a version of events, Chris?
It's mostly invented. It's invented for political reasons. As I say, there is no climate crisis. Humans, we've seen these sorts of temperature increases countless times in the paleo past. They don't simply refer to what's happened in the past. We've seen these temperature. What we've seen in the last 200 years, 1 degree centigrade, is nothing out of the ordinary. And in fact, I would argue that the climate is actually now getting better. If you talk about sort of weather, that we have got slightly warmer, the winters are slightly warmer, we have longer growing seasons, we've had CO2 released into the atmosphere, partly because of the warmth, partly because of what we've also burnt. That has increased the global biomass by about 15% in the last 40 years. It's boosted food yields around the world. All of the extreme weather events, the wildfires, the Arctic ice that stopped melting or stopped its descent in 2007. The coral reefs that are the Great Barrier Reef is at its 4th highest level since observations began. The polar bears, more than you can shake a stick at. All of these scares that they use have all been debunked. The Gulf Stream recently, a paper showed that this is the big scare they have about the tipping points, that the Gulf Stream will stop and plunge us all into an Arctic winter. A recent paper showed the Gulf Stream is exactly the same strength as it was 60 years ago. I could go on. Wildfires in America, a quarter this century, last century, what they were going back to the 1600s. Look at the tree fire scarring records. Look at the science. Look at the observations. Don't listen to the doom mongers. It's a political persuasion that they're looking at. They're looking to destroy. Net zero will destroy our industrial and societal civilization. Because if you take away hydrocarbons, what Alethea perhaps doesn't realise is how much hydrocarbons are in everything we consume. Plastics, energy, obviously. It makes everything. It's in medicines. To take it out and to have net zero, to stop looking for hydrocarbons, oil and gas, would plunge us into. It would be a very, very bad place. It would be a world full of wars, hunger wars, armies fighting.
Wow. Maybe that's how they kind of want it, to establish a new order of some kind. Who knows about him? Self-impoverishment, is maybe the curious aim. I am intrigued though, Chris, and I ask this as a very confused onlooker to this argument. I said right at the beginning of the programme, that we live in a cockeyed, confused world, and it's hard to sort of make out. There's lots of unfathomable decisions happen across so many different sectors on a daily basis. And when it comes to this argument, everything you've just said makes perfect sense. And then, I look at all these climate scientists. They're not all getting paid by somebody. I mean, there are some, but, they've got this big old list of scientists who've said, look, we're in a perilous position. Unless we change, it's going to get worse. And that worsening will manifest in a devastating effect for countries, for hunger, for movement of people. Are they all making it up, those scientists? Are they misled by groupthink, or are they stupid?
An interesting question that's often asked. First of all, these idea that 97% of scientists believe in climate change. Well, we all believe in climate change. The climate is changing. So it depends what question you ask, and these have all been debunked. If you actually look at what scientists really believe, well, as I say, a lot of what is produced on the extreme is simply the product of a computer model, nothing more. There is no evidence for any of this. It is all computer model predictions, and they use these worst case scenarios in order to produce them. There's a lot of that. You will not get grant funding over the last 30 years if you dispute the settled science. You will get grant funding by producing papers that say all the Arctic ice is going to go, because that is what gets picked up in the mainstream media, that is what gets picked up by politicians, and that is what suits the hard left narrative. So when you say that most of the scientists believe, yes and no. If you don't believe, you don't get funded. So it's a self-cancelling operation. But I read a lot of science papers, and it is interesting to see the way they operate. In the abstract start, they will often sort of, go on about human-caused climate change. But if you actually look read the body of the work, they will present findings that don't always coincide with what they're saying in the abstract necessarily. They will present all of the evidence, and all of the evidence, which of course has been banned on mainstream media and is not really discussed, it's been settled, has been for 40 years, all of the evidence points out that there is not really a great problem. There may well be a problem in the climate. We could be hit by a meteorite tomorrow. I don't know. But if we look at the observational record, we are living in a relatively benign period of the climate, a slightly warmer climate. climate, which actually is beneficial, almost wholly beneficial. I read a story in The Daily Skeptic, just very briefly, just one moment today. They chopped down 100,000 trees in Belém, which is where they're holding this COP conference next month. They chopped down 100,000 mature rainforest trees to speed all the 70,000 delegates to make a 4-lane highway.
Oh yeah, I saw this.
Help them get to now. Luckily, there's also been a paper that's just been produced that shows that they looked over the last 20 years at 200 plots in the Amazon forest, and they found that because of the increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the trees have been getting fatter. The bigger ones have been getting fatter by 6% a decade, and generally, on average, it's about 3%. So I would argue it's forward with carbon dioxide, not chainsaws. Something that they could perhaps debate at...
as they glide down this newly built manufactured avenue that used to have a nice lot of greenery and trees there. Chris, thank you as ever. Chris Morrison is the environment editor at the Daily Skeptic. Thank you to him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. What is the obsession with net zero? Come at all sides on this one. We're all ears at this end, and so is the nation. Just gone 10 to 2. This is Talk.
My home has been broken into, my files have been ransacked, somebody has been put into my office by a hostile state, and two parties are playing politics with it. This is national security of the United Kingdom, and the government's response is not, as mine was, do everything you can to make sure the prosecution works, but no, process. Well, who the hell's side are you on? This isn't about the bureaucracy, this is about leadership. We're not sent here to be civil servants, we're sent here to lead the country and to make decisions.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is, talk. It's 5 to 2. Let's get a voice note on all of this that's going on. Firstly, taxing on ships. This is Sean in Grimsby.
This net zero tax on the boats, it's not actually going to reduce any boats. All it's going to do is make what's on the boats more expensive. And according to Miliband and that, the only way to solve climate change is higher taxes. And we'll get to 2050, and guess what? They'll just shift the date again another 20 years. Then it'll be, oh, well, it's 2100 now. And it just continues to go on whilst pumping us for more taxes.
It's bang on. It's exactly like Sadiq Khan's ULEZ cameras. Thank you, Sean, for that. You're absolutely spot on. The ULEZ cameras, like the congestion, doesn't stop pollution. You just pay to pollute. So as long as you pay... In fact, they don't care how much you pollute. Sadiq's not bothered about pollution as long as you pay for it. You can drive 20 4x4s, you and your mates, all around London all day long, as long as you pay for it. They're fine with that. It's a nonsense. It's a con job. This is Andy in Hampshire. Andy, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. I seem to be speaking to you more often than I speak to the wife.
Yeah, same here. Same here, Andy.
Well, first it was called global warming.
Yep.
Now it's called climate change. What's the next acronym for this?
Death.
Because apparently the ice caps were supposed to melt by 2025. The whole world was supposed to end last week. I mean, it's just farcical, really. It's all these people that say that there is climate change. Well, there always is climate change. It's going to rain tomorrow. That's climate change. It's all about money. I'd like to find out exactly where the money is going for all this.
Well, Peter Barnes, our first guest, suggested that all roads lead to China on this because they make everything. They run a lot of the infrastructure that facilitates what is made and imported and trading, etc. So every element of the process has Chinese fingerprints all over it.
Do you think that this court thing about the 2 Chinese spies might have something to do with the fact that Ed Miliband wants 3,000 solar panels?
Well, it could do. I mean, these are the questions that you're kind of forced to ask. I mean, maybe it's directly linked. It was the panels that collapsed the case. It might. I mean, in the absence of any other logical answer, because we're getting nothing so far, we'll watch with interest. Andy, great start. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's get a word from Ben in Essex. We've not got loads of time, Ben, but I'm sure you can do it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Yeah, I do agree. I do think that this is a scam. I think it is a slow, silent move towards communism. I mean, you've only got to connect the dots with China and, follow the money.
Yep.
And what's always fascinated me is sea level changes don't seem to be happening now, do they? I mean, you've only got if you bought a home on the coast somewhere, the bank will always give you a mortgage. And I think, why would a bank give you a mortgage on a house that's at the coast if it's going to be...
It's going to be underwater, yeah.
Yeah. And all these big political figures, celebrities, all buying homes by the water, Miami and all of this. And I mean, that's just logic, isn't it? I do believe that this scam has been indoctrinated in us from an early age. I remember it was, don't use cans, CFCs are going to ruin the ozone layer.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would even...
The ozone layer,
Yeah, my opinion is I honestly think fossil fuels, oil and gas is renewable. And I think we've been lied to, so it's non-renewable.
So it goes around a big circle, kind of, and we just use it again. Listen, I hear you, Ben. I've got to stop there. One day we'll all be underwater. I remember it well. More from you on the way. Let's get the news headlines now at 2 o'clock.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome to the home of common sense. Lots to get through. We are talking, of course, about Keir Starmer, who's backing a global net zero tax on shipping. Now, this is him siding with the United Nations over Donald Trump. Experts say the new levy will hike consumer prices by 10% and hit British industry hard. But Labour are endorsing this and pressing on. Even the Conservatives are against it. They reject it as a costly part of net zero goals. We'll have more on that. Meanwhile, Downing Street is stating that it would be absurd for the Prime Minister to have intervened in the Chinese spy scandal, as the case was a, quote, criminal matter. Now, this, of course, involves a Chinese-owned company operating a secure Whitehall data hub and is now connected to a failed prosecution of alleged spies accused of passing on information back to Beijing. It's complex. What are the, if you like, the boiled-down answers to all of this? We'll try to get to the root of it. And the BBC has been criticised for showing emotional scenes of a Palestinian prisoner's family while omitting his terrorist background. Murad Abu al-Rub is serving 4 life sentences for killing 4 Israelis. He was freed, though, under the Gaza deal, one of hundreds of convicted terrorists released. Critics say this fuels anti-Semitism and erodes trust in the BBC. Somewhat of a glaring error, I think we could all agree on. We've got everything you need to know at this end. We'll bring you all the breaking news, and there may be more on that Chinese story as well. Watch this space, 0344 499 1000. Of course, there's lots of things going on in life at the moment. Again, to come back to what I said at the beginning, we seem to say this on every show, this sort of weird, upside-down... You know when you go to a theatre and you're kind of waiting for the show to start, and there's like suddenly there's a bit of a lull, and then you hear some fella in the orchestra blow his trumpet. You go, oh, he's warming up, you know, and you think, brilliant, guys, it's starting in a minute. The overture will be round the corner, and you know, you look around and you see some lights move, and then eventually the show starts, it all kicks into action, and a green witch jumps on the stage. Fantastic. We're waiting for the green witch. It's almost as if we're in a sort of perpetual cycle of waiting for something to happen. It's applying across all areas of our life, but none more so, of course, than the economy. When is it going to pick? Is it just because we talk about it a lot now? Whereas perhaps we never used to quite as much. Once upon a time, there was a budget every year, and you'd read about it in your... Well, you might see it on the news at 10, and then you'd read about it in your newspapers the next day. Today, we're in a constant state of debate and discussion. Is it that? I don't know. It just seems that the we're all royally skint argument isn't going away. And we now know that the IFS has warned Rachel Reeves that she must be bold in her budget, facing a 22 billion quid plus shortfall. And a very thin financial buffer to deal with it. Fiscal pressure from borrowing, weak growth limit options, with Labour's tax pledges making new revenue tough. Reeves may target the wealthy, though, with higher capital gains tax or council tax. And we understand they might even blame Brexit for this and past Conservative budgets. Well, why wouldn't they? They're the Labour Party. Let's firstly speak to Martin Beck, Chief Economist at WPI Strategy. Martin, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Sorry about the orchestra analogy, but that's kind of how it does feel a little bit. We're sort of, you know, I'm waiting for action. It's like watching my kid at the school running race. Come on, they'll blow the whistle any minute now. But there is no whistle. When is it going to get good?
Look, I mean, I think there's a tendency to be a bit too gloomy about the UK economy. You know, but we're not out of positives.
Yeah.
If you look at, for example, our household balance sheets, savings are high, debt levels are low. Inflation is high at the moment, but hopefully as we move into next year, it will start coming down. Interest rates have been falling and they should fall further in 2026. But that said, there's no doubt that Rachel Reeves has a couple of big problems facing her for the budget. The government's borrowing a lot of money at the moment. You know, it's on course this year to borrow about £130 billion, or 5% of GDP, and that's a very high deficit for an economy which isn't in a recession. Debt's very high. We've got the highest public debt since the 1960s. And on top of all that, the cost of government borrowing is also rising. So she's kind of got she's facing a kind of triple whammy there.
Well, the short answer, as many people say, we'll talk to Dr. Phil White on this point. He's a member of Patriotic Millionaires, and I'm sure you're aware of their kind of stance and what they would propose. But that is an area we understand the Treasury are considering, and that's a wealth tax of some kind.
That's right. I mean, I think the issue of a wealth tax, politically, it looks very attractive. You know, there are a lot of people out there with lots of money. I think the risk is that the revenue from a wealth tax would be very uncertain. We know that rich people are relatively mobile. They can leave the country quite easily. It would probably take several years to actually work out the mechanics of a wealth tax, so you might not get the revenue immediately. And I think the evidence suggests the wealth tax would have damaging effects on investment and confidence in the country. So I'm not sure a wealth tax is a panacea that some suggest it might be.
Well, I mean, if you put, and I don't want to advocate this, but if you put, I don't know, 3%, top rate 45%, if you said, OK, it's going to be 48% on earnings over, say, 200,000, I mean, I would imagine that would bring in a fair few quid in itself.
It would bring in a couple of billion. I think the risk there is that people on that kind of income, they're already paying a historically high share of their income in tax. Yeah. So if you push it up further, could you potentially tip them over the edge where they're discouraged from working harder, or they might even move to a place like Dubai or Milan or somewhere.
And I was just going to say, Martin, there is also it's not unreasonable to introduce a kind of an ethical component to this. I mean, just because you've got a few quid, the idea that you have to give almost half of your money to the government doesn't follow, right? I mean, there's an argument to say, well, no, that's not fair just to keep going to... What would you do every time there's a little bit of a bump in the road? You go, well, we'll make it 49% this year. What about 50%? Round it off nicely.
I mean, even if you got the ethical point there, but even if you exclude that, I think from an economic perspective, given how high tax rates are now, that you do risk pushing people over the edge to the point where raising rates doesn't actually generate any more revenue. Where we move to what it's called the Laffer curve, where the tax go up and up, revenues can actually fall. And I guess the fear is that the tax burden in the UK is the highest now since the 1950s. Are we getting to a point now where higher tax rates aren't very effective at raising more revenue?
Mm. Is it an urban myth that income tax only began as a temporary measure?
It was introduced, I think, during the Napoleonic Wars as a temporary measure then. But I think during the 19th century, the government got rid of import duties, and they thought income tax was a kind of a permanent way of replacing the revenues there. But you can see the ratchet effect there. When income tax began, it was probably like 5p in the pound. Yeah. Now, 45p for a higher earner. Indeed.
I mean, there is an argument that some people advocate, and that is that, we just have to get real. And yes, it will mean, whatever those ethical arguments about should you give half of your money to the government, which is quite a powerful line, but nonetheless, some advance the argument, Martin, that look, we've got an ageing population, we've got social care issues, NHS issues, education issues, so growing population, ageing population, etc., people living longer, massive problems. We literally just have to come clean and say, it's got to be paid for. Stop messing around with taking Peter's money to pay Paul. Just come straight out with it. If you're worth a few quid, it's 50%. It might be 55%. We'll have to up the lower levels as well a little bit, so 40% becomes 42%. That, some argue, is the inevitable direction of travel.
That's a plausible argument, but let's not forget there are alternatives to higher taxes. One is to bring about more restraint when it comes to the public spending. I mean, sure, we've got to spend more on health and pensions, for example, because of an ageing population. Yeah. But if you look at, say, public sector productivity, that's still lower now than it was in 2019. There must be surely ways of reforming the public sector where we could get more output out of that part of the economy. And of course, the other alternative is to try and generate more growth in the economy. Yeah. If we get more growth, we'll get more tax revenues, and we won't need to raise tax rates to support the public finances. So let's think about what can we do in terms of promoting growth. And there's some obvious things there. For example, energy prices. Yeah. We have the highest energy prices in the Western world. That's hurting industry. It's hurting people's disposable income. So let's try and do something on energy prices. Let's look at reforms to the public sector to boost productivity. There are ways we could get growth up, but it does require some political capital and some risk-taking to do that.
Yeah. I want to get back to a few years ago, and it was a few years ago, but if this is in the 90s, Martin, my direct debit for gas was 20 quid a month, and my direct debit for electricity was 20 quid a month, and it seemed to stay that way forever. I think we need to get back to a bit of that, don't we?
I think that would be very helpful. I mean, energy feeds into every form of economic activity you can think of. Yeah. If we can get energy prices down, we'll become more productive, more prosperous, and more more competitive with countries in the rest of the world.
Spot on. Martin, thank you very much for your time. Appreciated. Martin Beck, Chief Economist at WPI Strategy. Let's talk to Dr. Phil White, technologist and member of Patriotic Millionaires. Phil, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you?
Very well. Nice to have you with us. So, patriotic millionaires, basically people like yourself who are worth a few quid, are willing to pay a bit more tax. Is that broadly the deal?
Yeah, broadly. Basically, we're saying, actually we can afford it. We'd like to contribute more to the country, more to society and so on. So come on and tax us and we'll help.
You can, of course, voluntarily pay more. I think there's a specific form, isn't there, you can fill out and say to HMRC, I want to give you a few extra quid.
Yeah, there is. But, taxation it's not a sport. It's not a voluntary endeavour. And it only really works if everybody contributes. And so what we're seeing is that, actually we could raise really staggering amounts from taxes on wealth, be it a wealth tax or tax on income from wealth. And, we're talking about 24, 30 billion pounds and so on. But that doesn't come through voluntary contributions. It comes through some government action, actually setting an agenda and saying that, really we expect the wealthiest to contribute more. And then we do that through the tax mechanism. And only through that tax mechanism can we address the root causes of some issues that we have. If I give some money voluntarily, I can maybe address a symptom or two. Only through taxation can we really deal with the issues.
So just explain roughly how the Patriotic Millionaire proposal works. This is about people with, pretty substantial assets, I understand.
Yeah, and we do need to separate wealth from income. And with your last speaker, you were talking primarily about income taxes, I think.
Yeah.
So this is tax on wealth. And what we're saying is that, with a tax-free threshold of £10 million in the bank or £10 million of assets, then anything above that could be taxed at 2% per year. And that just by itself would raise £24 billion. But, we're also saying actually there's a lot of income from wealth as well, because the wealthy, don't get their income from work in the same way. They get it from capital gains tax, they get it from dividends and so on. And actually we should be equalising particularly capital gains tax with the tax rate on income, because that seems fair. Otherwise I can just sit here, money in some investment that grows in value or property, and that income is taxed at a lower rate than somebody who works for a living, and that doesn't seem right.
We keep reading headlines about millionaires leaving the UK, Phil, because they are worried about things like this.
Yeah, I know, we do keep reading those headlines, they keep coming back, but our experience is, it doesn't happen. And I noted actually Rachel Reeves hinted yesterday, I think, that some figures out from the OBR were likely to confirm it doesn't happen. Now, we'll see what that says. I don't want to preempt that. But, we have to remember that the UK is a great place to live. People have families here. People have connections. They're not all just going to, jump ship because of a 2% per year tax on wealth. And, we should also remember, actually, wealth will typically grow at 5% per year with an investment strategy. So even 2% per year, you're still going to see real growth from that wealth. I don't see people leaving at that point.
You might have 10 billion quid's worth of assets, but not an income as a result of those assets. I mean, this might be an unusual scenario. I don't know how that pans out in the sort of spectrum of the rich, as it were. But I mean, you could own property to that value, but not have a great income to support it. I mean, what happens then if you're going to suddenly ask somebody for 100,000 quid in tax and they don't even earn that?
Yeah, and there are mechanics in there, but I think it's important that we don't let the details stand in the way of the principle. And the principle is that those with the broadest shoulders should contribute more. You were talking about growth at the last, again, sort of 5 minutes ago, and the point was there that, if we tax working people and put more tax on national insurance contribution of earned income, then you do hit growth. Actually, by taxing the wealthy, we're not going to get growth in the same way, because that money is savings or whatever. It's not money that's actively flowing around the economy. It's not money that's going to disincentivize employers from hiring people. So it's a very different case. And there are practicalities there, but we can work through those.
How many patriotic millionaires are there?
There are the best part of 100 nowadays. I mean, we've only been around in this country for 3 years or so, and we've grown, we've grown in numbers. And but on that, we do a lot of polling of millionaires, and what we find is that something like 80% of millionaires, not just members, 80% of millionaires would support this kind of wealth tax.
And that's interesting. So there's wide support on your surveying of this for a tax like this. Are we aware that this has been done in other countries, Phil? Is there anywhere where we can see evidence that this has worked?
Yeah, there is evidence, and some of it which gets cited back again is not perfect. I mean, there was an example in France, but really they pitched the wealth tax at a very low threshold, and I think it was unworkable because I forget what the threshold was, but it was less than $1 million. And there's just too many people in the net and people resent it. Spain actually has quite a strong example as well, which has led to an increase in tax receipts, and there's evidence there that money can be gained from it and so on. And again, Denmark's done some successful stuff. We do tend to see a bit of seesawing as the government changes colour from one election to the next. But yeah, there is evidence there. There are some examples that haven't worked. We learn from those, make it better. And we think this sort of £10 million threshold is probably a good place to start.
Well, we'll wait and see in November whether Rachel Reeves adopts this or something similar. Phil, lovely to speak with you, sir. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Dr. Phil White, he's a technologist and a member of Patriotic Millionaires. If I told you how much that man was worth, you'd fall off your chair. But that's a whole other story. But he's willing to pay much more. If you've got assets over the 10 million mark, then a 2% wealth tax is what he and his organisation would propose. Would you back that? Do you think that's something that would work? Is there another form of that is fair? Because you have to look at fairness. You can't just go, well, you're worth a few quid, so we'll tax you, because you would keep coming back to that, wouldn't you? You keep every year that things were bad, you'd keep going, well, just go to the rich guy over there. He's got the money. That's like asking the wealthiest person in the pub to pay for all the rounds. Well, he's got more money. Why would he not pay for all the rounds? He earns loads more money than the rest of us. He should pay it. Really? Well, a few weeks, months down the line, he won't have any money to buy any rounds. 0344 499 1000. What we do know is a stonking big old tax is coming to hit someone. Who will it be? It's going to take some form or another. We're already highly taxed. Will it be in council tax? Will it be in dividends? And, if they start hitting small businesses again, it would be... because that happens all over the place. I was talking to a guy who's building a house, and I won't mention the local authority, but he's trying to build essentially bought a property to knock down, because it's derelict pretty much, and build again. And it's quite time-consuming to get everything in place. And so it's gone on for about 13 months from the point of finding it, buying it, and starting to get all the planning permission in order. And he gets a letter from the local council that tell him that, firstly, well, he got the first letter telling him you've still got to pay full council tax. So he's like, well, I don't use any. It's in a field, mate. I don't use any. So there's no street lights, no bins being collected. Nothing's happening. Still got to pay full council tax. You'd expect at least a bit of a discount. If any at all. Then he gets a letter saying because the property's been empty for 12 months, that carries a 100% surcharge. Double your council tax. What? You've got to pay double the council tax because he hasn't yet built the house, even though the planning permission and all the other bits and pieces are still double the council tax. Now, you get that, you think, really? That's a small business. Really? And that's why people resent taxation, because of stuff like that. It just seems we have to tax everything. If we do have to tax something, then what should it be? What is fair? 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, 0344 499 1000. Now let's go to Kevin in Leicester on that big question. Our obsession with net zero, Kevin. What do you think? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and I feel privileged to be talking to the housewife's choice, Ian Collins.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I love it. Every time I hear Jeremy say that to you, I love that. Sorry,
I know. I've noticed somebody, I don't know how that started, but anyway. I'd like to think there's some house husbands out there as well, Kevin.
It looks that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, going to the point, okay. I'm not a professor. There's some really intelligent people out there that say climate change is real, and they show figures and facts about it to say it's real.
Yep.
And there's other professors out there who are top, very clever people, far more intelligent than me, who just say it's a hoax and show figures, facts, comparing it to the Ice Age, how it's thawed out. It's all just rubbish, okay? Yep. I don't know, okay? So here's my analogy on it. At least make it make sense. For example, we could be drilling oil from the same fields that Norway take where they drill. Yep. And instead we don't because of net zero, and we don't want to do that. But we'll buy energy from them. I think they're our biggest supplier of, I think it's gas, and I think we're second or third or somewhere up there with electricity. We buy a hell of a lot off them, and that's then shipped over, and that, of course, is not doing the environment any good either, and that just gives us a much more expensive price.
True.
It gives them, it gives them a great price, and it doesn't make sense because the atmosphere moves. Look, just a quicker comparison. These clean air zones, in London and Birmingham, Well, I do a lot of driving around Birmingham. I'm an HCV driver. I can tell you this is a fact. What people do to avoid the clean air zone, they'll go a mile down the road, they'll jump on the M42, they'll go down a junction, and then they get off. And that causes massive congestion with the traffic trying to go through.
Yeah. You've got this pollution bubble in all the areas outside the clean air zone.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like literally a mile down the road.
Yeah.
So, but because of that, we'll just sit there with our engines on the M42 in traffic. Well, that's not saving anyone. That is only a mile down the road. It's just, and obviously it's wasting more fuel, more time and effort. It's costing money, more money. All I'm trying to say, I'm not smart. I'm an idiot when it comes to stuff like this, but at least make it make sense.
That's what I said at the beginning, exactly that, Kevin. It's like if it made sense and everyone came to us and went, hey, guys, you've got to take this seriously. Look, this is what's happening. These are the workings out. This is the unequivocal fact. You'd go, oh, blimey, yeah, fair enough. But then, like you say, another group of people go, well, no, it's not quite that bad. We're not going to die, put it that way. It's all of that kind of fog that's around it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. And at the end of the day, like they know, they can have their debate. Let them talk about it. Let them talk to each other and come to a conclusion. But in the meantime, no other country is being as stupid as us. And the final point I will make on this is, if something like this is going to happen, let's say they prove it. Let's say they prove climate change is real. Okay, they prove it's real. If we got to net zero tomorrow, it would make no difference to this planet whatsoever. It's got to be, at least you've got to be involved in India and China and Russia and America. And it's got to be a world.
That's not like an inconvenient fact, is it? It's like, or a minor fact, rather. That's central to the whole argument. It's a global thing. It can't be done by one country. It's either got to be done by everybody or the entire argument falls flat. It's a great point. Kevin, thank you very much. Really lovely to speak. Thank you for that. A word on tax from Gary, who says, I'm convinced that most people wouldn't mind paying a bit more tax on the condition that they're getting something for it. For example, I pay almost £300 a month for my private health insurance because I can't rely on the NHS. But if the government took £250 a month more from me in tax, but in exchange I got fantastic National Health Service, that virtually matches the private one I pay for, then I would be happy with that. What I'm not happy to do is give the government another 250 quid a month so they can just splash it up the wall on another huge pay rise for train drivers or croquet lessons for illegal migrants. Yes, that's exactly... Can they not see the insanity of all of this? I mean, it's bonkers. Somebody must be joining the dots, you'd like to think. Ross is in the whirl on this issue. Are we all going to die, Ross? How are you doing?
I don't think we are. Hiya, Ian.
Hiya.
So, my theory on net zero, now, without going too conspiratorial on this, but you have spoke about stuff like this on your show before, and Phil said on Julia's show that China plan 100, 200 years in advance, and they're not bothered about 4 or 5 years, 10 years. They're looking at the big picture. So, but we used to think like that, you know, I think of people like Cecil Rhodes and stuff. We used to have a vision for the future.
Yeah.
But we've obviously had these enemies from way back when. China's definitely one of them. Russia's definitely one of them. The Ottomans, whoever. So would they not have had plans 200 years ago, 100 years ago to upend us in the West? And maybe that net zero was part of this plan.
Yeah.
Because really, they've taken away our military. We're financially weak. We're totally dependent on China for everything. Even America to a degree like that. Europe, we're all dependent on for our military products, for everything.
100%.
So in a way, that could have been part of their long-term vision.
And they've only been able to do it by imposing a kind of Marxist communist regime with this veneer of capitalism. So they play all the capitalist games, but they're able to do it essentially what we would consider to be a loss. But it doesn't matter if it's a loss if people are working for naff all. As a country, I mean, we'd be that rich if we paid people £1 an hour.
Exactly. It's not a loss, is it? It's a big gain to them.
As a country, it is, yeah. I mean, it means you've got a lot of impoverished people in.
Finances, but really, well, the money's all just a bloody up in the air anyway, isn't it? They print the numbers. I mean, our money's not backed by gold, so they can do what they want with us.
Yeah, it's not a satisfying thought, is it, to go home with? But there you go. Ross, thank you very much indeed for that. Love that call. Ross in the Wirral. This one from Gareth. Motorists would not have an issue with higher taxes. Back to that. If the government demonstrated restraint and where they spend it, foreign aid being the one that springs to mind, Labour throws our money around like it grows on trees. Unfortunately, until they do, that any talk of rises is met with resistance from the working class, as it's the taxpayer that funds them. Until money grows on trees, I think that means. Maybe if they were more frugal, it may go a long way with us taxpayers. Good point, yeah. I mean, it's a similar point that Gary just made. If somebody shows you the workings out and goes, look, you pay more tax, but look at this. It's what you get. You know, the kind of Scandinavian model is the obvious one, isn't it? Whilst not perfect, you can do a little bit of that. You can go, yeah, the taxes are sky high, and there's, they're unparalleled in that respect. However, have a look at what you could have won. Have a look at the list of things you get, and that's. Again, it's not perfect. I know it's always put up there as the kind of perfect model. There are so many imperfections, but there would be in any system. But you see the point. If you can see the great health service, you don't mind paying the extra tax. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This comes from Jenny in Bicester, who says, Ian, if you look at the geology of the UK, you will see how the climate has changed over billions of years, from deserts to wetlands to marine seas. The rocks show the climate at the time. Climate has always changed, and throughout this time, CO2s have been higher than today. The sun plays a major role in our climate and weather. Yeah, I mean, the idea that we kind of eradicate like what the weather would do anyway in a system is a bit bizarre. I come back to that question again. This is where we don't have all the answers. If you took every human being off the planet and came back in 2050, would it be net zero? And even if it was net zero in terms of CO2s, would it be net zero in terms of acceptable temperatures? So would we come back in 2050 and go, oh look, the temperature's gone back? Because there might be other factors, meteorological circumstances that dictate the weather just changes, as it has done before we even lurked on this earth, before we even developed a spine, before we even got rid of our tails as little apes. I'm pretty sure there's always been a change. Now, the BBC is under fire for showing the crying picture of a crying sister of released Palestinian prisoner Murad Abu al-Rub, omitting his terror convictions for a deadly 2006 bombing. The coverage clearly blurs the lines between terrorists and victims, which does fuel anti-Semitism, as trust in the BBC's independence sort of hits a new low, I think we can say, on this. I'm genuinely staggered. Nicole Lampert joins us, the journalist. Nicole, good afternoon to you.
Thank you for having me on.
Like yourself, I'm sure, I've put many packages together for different elements of broadcast and written all sorts of things. I can't imagine at what point you would not mention this fact when commentating on a very specific person who's being repatriated to their family.
It's staggering, but also unsurprising at this point, in that when we had the last hostage prisoner exchange, we had very similar issues. I called out various BBC journalists for this. So it's not like, this is the most contentious issue that the BBC has. They got into trouble over the Bob Vylan Glastonbury set, and they had to pull their own documentary for, again, omitting very important information, such as their key character was the son of a Hamas politician.
Yeah.
So you think they would be so careful with this.
Right.
But you can only think it's deliberate, that they are deliberately trying to make out that this is that somehow Israel was holding hostages too. I can't think of any other reason for it, because, as you say, the journalists, they have to go through various steps to put these packages together.
Correct.
You have to have an idea of who you're talking to. It's absolutely crazy.
I mean, I've worked for the BBC. I mean, there's a process there, and I don't know, because it makes you believe in a sort of a wider conspiracy, doesn't it? That right up the food chain, there's some overlord of an editor going, no, don't mention the past. Now, I'd like to think that didn't happen, and if that didn't happen, then fundamentally a journalist has failed in their very basic duty of telling the story.
Well, like you, I once had faith in the BBC. Grew up on the stories, the romantic stories of people across occupied Europe listening to it. It was the voice of freedom for many people. But the last 2 years has really kind of changed my mind on all of it. And I have spoken to many BBC insiders to try and work out what's going on. And there are various issues that are pushing its agenda. It's partly as an activist agenda of the younger reporters. Then there's a kind of general sympathy for the Palestinians, and then a kind of hatred of the IDF in particular, and of Israel. And you can see it going all the way up the food chain, and it's been called out again and again, and they seem to have just gone into kind of defense mode, and it's almost like that there's no one taking ultimate responsibility for the many errors that they've made in this.
I mean, it's is it a kind of, I don't know, as distinct from a deliberate you know, as we both mentioned there, the food chain thing, or is it just a sort of chronic, you know, left-wing naivety where, well, I don't need to mention that because I've just put a package together and that prisoner's being released is in exchange for that hostage being released, so that's not relevant to the story. It's an equivalence, it's like on like, and I believe that, and the person that checked it over also kind of believed that. Didn't occur to them to go, well, hang on a second, it's the people that Israel are releasing are not really hostages, they're actually prisoners, so every one of them will probably have a bit of a similar story or something like that. Could it be that it is a left-wing problem? And I'm not trying to use that phrase left-wing to be smart or as a pejorative, just to genuinely try to identify what it might be that would allow a journalist to completely omit such a, what I would consider to be a crucial part of the story.
Well, I think I certainly wouldn't put it down to naivety at this point, just because, you know, for the reason that I mentioned, that it's such a hot topic. The BBC knows it's going to be looked at and criticised. Yeah. I can only see that this was deliberate. And you could stem it back to the fact that the BBC won't call Hamas terrorists. So from the start, we've seen them equivocate that Hamas and the IDF are the same. And in fact, in many ways, with their reporting, what we see is that Hamas figures are always believed, and the IDF, everything is like, we could not confirm. So it's like their morals have been turned upside down, where they prefer an Islamic extremist terrorist group that murders many civilians deliberately and is currently murdering its own civilians to, yes, imperfect, but democratic nation and supposed ally. Yeah. And the problem with the BBC doing this is that, firstly, I think, you know, it affects people's trust in the BBC, because there's people like you and I who totally see through it, and there are millions of people around the country that feel the same. And also it creates anti-Semitism. For example, after the Bob Villan appeared on Glastonbury shouting "Death to the IDF," then anti-Semitism figures spiked for 2 days as a result of that. So it's creating genuine anti-Semitism. And as we had 2 people being murdered in a synagogue just 2 weeks ago, we can see the results of that. And I'm not saying that this guy, he watched the BBC and was radicalised, but it all results in a kind of radicalised nation that we are feeling.
Well, spot on. And when the documentary happened, where it turned out that the kid fronting it was related, or the son of a terrorist or something, I thought, well, that clearly is the bullseye of all errors, and that surprised me in this respect, Nicole, because I thought, even before then, these criticisms of the BBC, the conversation we're having now, had been happening, things that Jeremy Bowen hadn't mentioned in his reporting, and there's a bit of a list going on there for old Jezza, and various other elements of their output. So they were already under the cosh for a very specific issue of due impartiality when it came to reporting on Israel, Gaza, Hamas, and all that goes with it. And yet this documentary somehow got a green light. I thought, I mean, at that point, I thought that's the end of the BBC. It's such a howler of an error. And I was surprised, again, given what had happened previously, that wasn't picked up. But then I thought, well, maybe that's the end of it. You know, they're not going to make that old blunder again. And then the Bob Villan thing happened, and then this has happened. And you are forced to, as you rightly have been saying, Nicole, you're forced to go, well, there's probably, if it looks like and sounds like, then I think we have to call this out for what it is.
Yeah, and even, after the documentary fiasco, Samir Shah, the chairman of the BBC, called it a dagger to the heart of the BBC's impartiality. And Lisa Nandy, who I would say is not really a friend of Israel, she at one point was the parliamentary chair of the Palestinian organisation, but she's also, she's been calling out their bias and saying it creates anti-Semitism. So Samir Shah, he has called for an independent investigation. The BBC itself, even though he's the chairman, is refusing to do it. Yeah. The government have been criticising the BBC. Our last hope kind of lands with Ofcom, who are also investigating this, or at least the documentary fiasco. And I'm hoping that will create something. But it just feels like the BBC is is now like a law unto its own. And the law of the country is that Hamas is a prescribed terror group. But you would not believe that watching the BBC.
Yeah.
And they're not, again, it's partly what they emit. So they emitted the
100%.
guy, they admitted that this guy was a terrorist who killed 4 people. And they're admitting, for example, talking about the fact that Hamas are currently killing people in Gaza.
Spot on, and what grim stuff in this industry, Nicole. We shouldn't be having these conversations in the 21st century. Certainly not about the BBC, but they keep on demonstrating heady levels of ineptitude in this area. Nicole, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Nicole Lampert, the journalist, just on what the hell is going on there. But part of the reason it confuses me. In fact, there's a load of reasons it confuses me. Doing this for a living, it disappoints me. But I know a lot of people who work at the BBC, and I know a lot of people who are not left-wingers who work at the BBC, and I know a lot of people who are quite senior and not left-wingers who work at the BBC. So that compounds it even further. You think, how in the name of Lord Reith's socks did we get to a stage where this group of people... And I've told the story before, when I worked at the BBC, one of the most left-wing producers that worked there was one of the most ardent when it came to impartiality. She was brilliant at not throwing her left-wing credentials into anything, and would always say, Nigel Farage was always her go-to, you need to get Nigel Farage on this because he will be a good counter to that argument. That's proper journalism. You're meant to leave your politics at the door. By the way, it's not just the BBC. There's a couple of other channels out there that I think are guilty as hell on some of this stuff. So the reason I'm confused is, as somebody who works in this industry and knows people who works at that specific organisation, it seems unfathomable to me how some of this stuff gets through. It's usually when you speak to somebody one-on-one, they say, look, nobody checked it. I mean, it literally is that. Journalists put it together. The journalists didn't even think twice because perhaps they're not as qualified as they once were. Whatever the case happens to be, I don't think you can name check somebody who's being repatriated with their family, who has served a nearly 20-year prison sentence, had been serving 4 life sentences, without a reference to that very point. I don't know how that is possible. Journalistically, I do not know how that would be possible to sit around, you get the footage, you sit at a computer, you write the story up, and you explain to your audience that Palestinian prisoner Murad Abu al-Rub is being repatriated with his family, but no mention of why he was in jail. You've got his name, you've got his sister there crying her eyes out as this is happening, and you have no reference, no point of reference. It's unthinkable that you could miss that out, the copy, as it's called, that you were putting together for the piece. Unthinkable. Derek's in Manchester. Back to climate change. Derek, are you quivering in your boots at impending doom?
I'm half laughing about it because it's the biggest scam that anyone's ever... We're all falling for it, hook, line and sinker, and it's the biggest scam I've ever seen. At the end of the day, if you remember, your history books will tell you that they used to have markets on the River Thames when it froze over every single year. Things like that. Climates do change, and what you've also got to notice is that a lot of these politicians have got shares in wind farms and that, which are utterly useless. I mean, if you look every day, look at the skies, because I do remember as a kid, I'm like in my 60s, and I do remember as a kid that we never had sort of grid patterns all over the sky and a complete blanket of cloud for months and months of the year, which that sort of cloud obviously holds in heat. So it's not really surprising that they can go on and say, oh yeah, the temperatures are warming up. Of course they're warming up. They're putting a blanket over us. They're putting an overcoat over us.
Yeah. That's how it would work. What do you... I mean, so 2050...
I mean, the other thing is, they're talking about, we want to block the sun out. Why would you bother? You're putting wind farms up and putting solar panels on everything you can find, and they want to block the sun out. How ridiculous is that?
Well, just a little bit, you might be inclined to say. 20, listen, Derek, 2050 is the kind of D-Day for all of this. What's going to happen to our planet if we don't hit net zero by then?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's a scam. As I say, if they left the weather alone and stopped trying to modify it, and to be quite honest, all the weather modification is just to convince you all that we're going to hell in a handcart and the planet's warming up or whatever. I mean, that's what all the weather modification is about.
Yeah.
It's convincing us all, and then when they bang a load of tax on top of it and say, oh, we've got to tax you for this, we've got to tax you for that, but it's all for the planet's good. Well, you know, I mean, that's the end game, isn't it? Locking us all up, 10-minute cities and all this rubbish.
Well, I hope they don't do that, because I can't get anywhere in 10 minutes.
It's coming. Keir Starmer's starting it with his digital ID, but it's coming. They'll have you all locked up, and you won't be able to own a car. You won't be able to own a vehicle because you won't need to go anywhere. It's a prison.
I wouldn't go that far, Derek, but I certainly share your view on the issue that we're not being told everything, or if we are being told everything, then it's woeful and doesn't go anywhere near explaining this what we're told is, you know, a religion almost of net zero. We just want the information. Derek, thank you very much indeed for that. They better crack on with those 10, 15-minute cities, hadn't they? There were 15-minute cities. Now they've gone down to 10, Derek said. They're making terrible progress. That's all I can say, because I don't think they've constructed one yet. 0344 499 1000. It's 10 to 3. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
To talk to Matthew in Cheshire. Just before we do it is the voice of doom, day one. It's a brand new mystery voice, always of a political background, usually a politician you're looking for, dead or alive, new or old. Whose voice is this?
Because it's based on a deception.
Now, I think it's difficult, but there's something about it that says that's doable to me. Have another listen.
Because it's based on a deception.
Who's that? 87222, if you think you know. Usual T's and C's, don't phone in, there ain't no prize. If we get a correct answer, we reveal all after the news. Here it is again.
Because it's based on a deception.
Who's that then? 87222. Matthew in Cheshire. What have you got for us, Matthew? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Fine show yet again.
Thank you, mate.
Oh, fine show. Yeah, Ed Millipede. Oh, God. It's one thing after another, isn't it? When I was a kid in the 80s, they found out that spray cans cause this massive hole the size of America in the
me Old Spice went in the bin.
Oh, it was everything, wasn't it? So they said, trees. We need trees. That'll get rid of it.
Yeah.
We've got loads of open land.
Yeah.
Loads. We've got mountains. I've not seen one tree planted. Not seen one tree planted. Say, oh, that'll sort it all out. And it's just recycled buff over and over again. We're all ozone nasty. I can remember. I live in Warrington, and the Mersey was in the 80s was the dirtiest river in going. It used to have foam on it from levers from the soap factories. And even my nan said during the war when it first. They used to have red on it as well. They used to say it was an icebergs from Russia with blood on it from the Germans when she was a little girl. So it was filthy. And now it's one of the cleanest rivers. It's got trout in there. It's got seals in there. It's got little porpoises. The rivers are clean. Everything's clean. And they just want more and more. All they want to do is just tax us. Ed Millipede, he's just a leech. Sucking the life out.
But you can't underestimate how pathological these people are, Matthew. I mean, he's so wedded to this idea. I think even Starmer's kind of like left him alone to do whatever he needs to do. And it's such an extraordinarily expensive plan that he's got in place with so many question marks over it. I can't think of anywhere else where you would be allowed to spend that amount of taxpayers' money without really doing your numbers, you know?
How can you trust a man who even sold his own brother to get into the leadership of the Labour Party? He stitched his own brother up.
Yeah.
So none of them could be trusted, and he's so brainwashed. They live in this carbon neutral. We're getting bus lanes. We're all stuck in traffic jams, and you have one bus that comes down every hour. And you're thinking, what's
all that? But, well, you know, my local authority just built a cycle lane. I won't even be able to do it justice by explaining how it looks, Matthew, but it is so bonkers in so many respects. I mean, I know it's always the same story. You don't see it's not a road cyclist would want to do. It's a pretty major road. You wouldn't want to cycle down it. And if you did, I would imagine there's half a dozen or so rush hour that do it. It also stops halfway and then goes nowhere. So you've got to get back on the road anyway. That must have cost a couple of £100,000 just for that one cycle lane, possibly more. And they're doing another one up the road as well. What's going on?
We've got one in Warrington near the hospital. They spent £750,000 so putting some pavements in, some people on there delivering their Uber food for immigrants delivering on bags to get in there. So we're not just housing them, we're not just setting hospitals. We're doing cycle lanes for them now.
Cycle lanes too. Matthew, I've got to move. You've been brilliant. Love the animation as well. Matthew in Cheshire. I always use this line. What other area would the council vote through a plan or a project that was going to cost that much money but would be used by so few? If you said we want council money to build a £1 million billiards hall that will be visited by around about 100 people a week, they would say, well, that doesn't really work because there's not enough people that are going to facilitate. It doesn't work. Mention cycle lanes, your quid's in, mate. That's the green light every day of the week. 0344 499 1000. Right now, let's get the news headlines here on Talk, 3 o'clock.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. What are we talking about here? Well, we're definitely talking about Keir Starmer because he's gone United Nations over United States. He is backing this idea of a net zero shipping tax. Trump said, don't do this. It's going to cost a fortune and everything goes up. Starmer's gone, no, we'll do it, despite consumer prices rising by 10%. And British industry being hit hard too. Even the Conservatives are rejecting this costly net zero goal. We'll take more calls on that. We're asking that question. What is the obsession with net zero? And come at this from every angle you like. Pro, against, or just maybe like most people, a little bit confused and questioning. Also this afternoon, Downing Street has stated that it would have been absurd for the Prime Minister to have intervened in the Chinese spy scandal, as the case was, quote, a criminal matter. For those unfamiliar, the case involves a Chinese-owned company operating a secure Whitehall data hub and is now connected to the failed prosecution of alleged spies accused of passing information back to Beijing. I mean, it's a grim picture, and it looks like it's going to get more confusing and more worrying as we find out more. And as we've been discussing, the BBC is criticised for showing emotional scenes of a Palestinian prisoner's family while omitting his terrorist background. This is a character called Murad Abu al-Rub, who is serving 4 life sentences for killing 4 Israeli soldiers. He was freed under the Gaza deal, although apparently there's some confusion as to whether he's actually out now. One of the hundreds of convicted terrorists set for release. But they didn't mention that he's a mass murderer. You might think that that would be a fairly relevant journalistic component to the story. Details on the way. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Let's do some more messages from you. Lots and lots to come here. This comes in from John, who's in Lancaster, who says, when you meet a climate crisis advocate, here are 6 questions to ask them. Number 1, what is wrong with the current global temperature? Number 2, when and where did the ideal climate occur? Number 3, how big would you like the polar caps to be? 4, when we arrive at your perfect climate, how do we stabilise it? 5, what period in history was the climate ever static? 6, what is the correct level of CO2s? Blimey, I like that, John. Thank you very much indeed. I'll have to try and remember those. All 6 of them. I'm talking to Dale Vince later, so I might put some of those to him. 0344 499 1000. So let's move to this story. It is the story of the moment, and it's not going away, and the smart money suggests there's much more to come. China accessed UK classified secrets for years. This is via a Chinese-owned data hub with vast amounts of sensitive material reportedly compromised. Now, the government has tightened scrutiny of foreign deals after warnings over Chinese espionage risks. Conservative MP Tom Tugendhat spoke this morning in Parliament. This is very passionate stuff. He was on fire here. Have a listen to what the Conservative MP had to say.
My home has been broken into, my files have been ransacked, somebody has been put in my office by a hostile state, and 2 parties are playing politics with it. This is national security of the United Kingdom, and yet here we have 2 individuals seeking to extract information from us. And the government's response is not, as mine was, do everything you can to make sure the prosecution works, but no, process. Well, who the hell's side are you on? This isn't about the bureaucracy, this is about leadership. We're not sent here to be civil servants, we're sent here to lead the country and to make decisions.
That's Tom Tugendhat. I thought that was a very impressive speech this morning in Parliament. Jack Elsom is the political editor at The Sun, who joins us. I mean, Tugendhat knows, security well in his previous position, of course, and I thought he spoke incredible, powerful speech there, Jack.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that many sides are trying to play politics with this. Labour against the Tories and Tories against Labour, trying to score points. Tom Tugendhat puts the whole thing in perspective and says at the heart of this is a severe issue of national security. You have 2 alleged Chinese spies who are passing information from the centre of Parliament to Beijing paymasters, and at the heart of it we have a Crown Prosecution Service who seems unable to bring a prosecution against these 2 men despite previously bringing charges, and we have a government seemingly unable to convince a despairing public that they did everything they could to try and secure this prosecution. And I think that some of the statements coming out from the government just absolutely beggars belief, because they said, for example, that anything relating to the current government's position is immaterial to this case because it happened, the alleged crimes, under the previous Tory government. But then we saw the witness statements last night, and the ones that were submitted by the Deputy National Security Advisor under this government clearly reflected the current government's policy towards China, where it says stuff like, we want an open relationship with China because they've got economic opportunities, we challenge where we must.
That's a new line since last July.
Totally. And so we have these 3 witness statements. The one under the Tories, by Matthew Collins, was pretty forensic
He's
and
the
damning.
Deputy
National Security Advisor, pretty damning and forensic in chronicling exactly what these 2 men got up to. Then you have supplementary witness statements because the Crown Prosecution Service said, we don't think that this original witness statement actually characterises China as the threat, and that is the bar, they say, for prosecution and to bring this trial to court. But those subsequent witness statements didn't really provide a smoking gun as to explicitly labelling China a threat. In fact, what the Tories are alleging, it did the opposite. It said, we want an open dialogue with China for economic purposes.
Kemi Badenoch, I thought, really got to the heart of where one of the big issues, there are many, as an issue of basic justice and security and all the rest of it, but there's also an issue about the credibility, and some might even say the stability of the Prime Minister himself. And she asked that question very directly. Are you literally saying that the Deputy National Security, not the National Security, the Deputy, actually made a lot of very, very key decisions on this, didn't even consult his boss, so therefore the boss didn't know, Jonathan Powell, and neither did the Prime Minister, and he said, yes, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, and
to many people, that is unbelievable.
Totally. It's the point that Tom Tugendhat made at the end of the Commons statement this morning. He said, well, we might as well go home then. If ministers and special advisors and politicians are not going to be involved in top matters of national security, and you are deciding to leave it, not just to the civil service, but to one civil servant, then what are we here for? And he made the case, as the old adage, that ministers decide and advisors advise, and the lack of, I think, of ministerial oversight in this case, or even just any oversight, either by Jonathan Powell, the Deputy National Security Advisor's boss, any other cabinet secretary, it does seem to stretch credulity, I think.
It really does. It's an interesting story. We were talking in the office earlier, Jack. It's one of those stories that now it's getting sort of really interesting, and I'm sure you will share this this annoyance that as it gets interesting, a lot of areas of journalism forget. You're almost coming at the story halfway through. So a lot of people are now going, what is this? Who are these guys? I didn't know anything about this. You brilliantly explained the background to this. Just tell us who the 2 accused were then. Were they people that worked around Parliament? Were they people that were connected in some way to politics?
Yeah, so one of them, Christopher Cash, worked in Parliament as a researcher. He worked for Alicia Kearns, a Tory MP, who at the time was chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Important role in Parliament under a Tory government. The second man, Christopher Berry, was a teacher, had links to Christopher Cash, and together, allegedly, I mean, it's important to say both men deny these allegations, but the witness statements we had them going in pretty forensic detail about what they're up to. It was meeting someone from the Chinese Communist Party, handing over information about deals such as Huawei, Newport Wafer Fab, giving them sort of political intelligence about who's likely to be in the cabinet, who's not going to be in, who's up, who's down. And to be fair, that information just seemed pretty ropey because none of it actually happened to be true. It was stuff like Tom Tugendhat's going to be in the cabinet, and he didn't end up doing that. Both men deny the charges, although if you actually read, and I think this is the second end of the coin, because the government are clearly coming under a lot of scrutiny here, but the Crown Prosecution Service as well, clearly they felt they needed more information to be able to press the charges. But if you read that, you think, why not just let that go to a jury? Because if you think, as the Director of Public Prosecutions, that you have a reasonable prospect of conviction, and judging from everything that I've read in these witness statements, it's hard to see how a jury wouldn't at least look at that information. It's, I think, incumbent on them now the Director of Public Prosecutions to explain exactly why they dropped the case.
Yeah.
They said to MPs yesterday, he had a chat with some senior MPs, Stephen Parkinson, who's the Director of Public Prosecutions, and he said, we had 95% of the way there to bring this to trial. We were just missing a 5%, which we believe was explicitly labelling China a threat, which under the Official Secrets Act, you'd have to have done to brought a conviction. But explicitly the information he needed now, I think, is what we really need to know, because many people will look at the information and go, they're bang to rights. How on earth was a prosecution not brought?
Yeah. Is that it now for them? I mean, is there, despite all that's going on and the questions and who knew what and who advised who and who might have had a quiet word with somebody but didn't have a quiet word with somebody, according to the, any public record of it, is it done? So these guys walk free. It can't now be kind of tried, or they can't go back to it and say, well, we're trying again.
I think it seems unlikely at the moment that a prosecution will be brought, not least because since the case collapsed, there's just been obviously so much commentary about it. You wonder whether or not it would have prejudiced the trial in the future. But the Prime Minister himself says he's very disappointed that this prosecution didn't go ahead. Obviously, everyone else is saying, well, you weren't that disappointed because you knew that the trial was about to collapse a few days before it did, and you didn't do anything to actually try and stop it. Now, Downing Street's line is, it would be absurd for a Prime Minister to get involved in the collapse of a court case, but when the Crown Prosecution Service themselves are asking the government for evidence, and the government is not forthcoming with that to a point which is sufficient, that's when lots of questions to be asked, and that's where it becomes a bit murky.
So, in layman's terms, what some people allege is that the government want to retain a fairly rosy and very nice relationship with China.
And this is the nub.
There's a lot of money going between the two, well, maybe not between the two, there's a lot of our money going over there, and they facilitate quite a lot in this country. Don't upset the Chinese, even though they're a bit dodgy. And it took nothing for somebody to say the right thing for this to go away.
This is the absolute heart of the case, and it's easy to get sort of like lost in the actual reads of it, but the wood through the trees, I guess, is that not just this government, but the last government as well, have a very, very muddled position on China. Because on the one hand, they talk about a threat to national security, economic security. We hear about all these espionage attempts which are trying to penetrate the British state.
No TikTok on civil service phones,
Exactly.
All that stuff.
On the other hand, you have a government that still wants to do business with the second largest economy, a government who is cozying up to China. We've had many ministers going over there. I'm sure we'll see Keir Starmer there maybe next year, who want to do business with China. Keir Starmer met President Xi not too long ago, and so it's that contradiction at the heart of government, which means that you have quite a weird position on China.
Because we're hearing that China has accessed UK classified secrets for years via this Chinese hub of some kind. I know that nations spy on each other to degrees, but it seems that these boys have got a PhD in it over there in China.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was chatting to someone pretty senior in government not too long ago about this big row about this Chinese super embassy, which is going to be built in London on the site of the Royal Mint. And they said, it's a total red herring. China are everywhere anyway. It doesn't matter just because they have a massive building in the middle of London. They can access basically anything. Their hacking is so sophisticated.
Yeah, like the TikTok on the phone thing. It doesn't really matter.
Exactly. And the espionage attacks are so pervasive. And if you chat to people in the sort of top of government, they just say that they are such a threat. What we need now, I think, is government to say that out loud and say, these guys are a threat to national security. Listen to people like Tom Tuggener, Ian Duncan-Smith, who've been in the receiving end of it, rather than trying to do this weird tightrope where they go, oh, we need you for all this economy stuff, but we've got to say that you're doing a bad thing as well.
Indeed. It's not gone away then yet?
No, definitely
not. There's more to play out on this.
I think actually the witness statements that came out very late last night probably throw out more questions than they answered.
100%.
Because you have a situation where it looked like, despite the government saying that everything related to the previous government's administration and their current position on China did not matter, you appeared to have what was essentially Labour Party policy implemented in the final two witness statements, which happened under this government. They're saying that Matthew Collins, just was providing context to the current government's position. Why would he do that? I have to be careful how I frame this, but why would he do that in isolation? Like, why would he just think to go and put Labour Party policy into something which we've been told is not required and everything related to the previous government's position? And that, I think, is what we need to get to the bottom of.
And when the CPS see what he'd written, they go, well, there's no case here. because we need substantial evidence that they're a threat of some kind.
Yeah, exactly.
Jack, thank you. Great to see you. It's going to get more confusing. This is proper spy novel stuff, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah.
It's there's a Netflix show waiting to happen.
There was a killer line in the witness statement last night where Chris Cash turned to Chris Berry, allegedly, and said, "You're in spy territory now." And you sort of read this in black and white, and it does feel like you're in a sort of John le Carre.
John le Carre novel, yeah. Jack, thank you. Jack Elsom is, of course, the political editor at The Sun. Thank you to him. Let's take a call on this. Chris is in Surrey. What have you got for us, Chris? Reference China and all that's going on over there.
Good afternoon, Ian. Very interesting show. I was listening to Tom Tugendhat.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Treason Act, there's a subsection which allows for people to be accused and charged with treason if they adhere to the king's enemies, which includes consorting with foreign agents.
Sure.
So these two could be done and should be done. And also, if Starmer's seen, and Starmer and other people can be proved to have sort of been complicit in it, then they should be done as well.
Yeah, and that's how high up it goes, right? I mean, this isn't just a case of the work experience kid coming across a file.
No, absolutely.
Much
absolutely.
bigger.
And Tom was clearly upset about it. You could see from his manner. He's someone I respect very highly, actually. And he's right about the civil service. They're supposed to be apolitical. They shouldn't have affiliations.
Yeah.
And the trouble is now, of course, they are. You know, they're very much political. They're mostly left-leaning woke agendas people, you know, so that this is what they want, this is what they believe in, and they use these things to progress through the service. It shouldn't happen. Government is there to dictate policy. Civil service is there to run the country.
100%. Brilliantly put. Chris, thank you very much indeed for that. Chris in Surrey. This is Simon in Bray, who says, as a member of the Conservative Party, I always advocated that Tom Tugendhat should be our leader, and that speech just confirms my thoughts. He's exactly what is needed to get rid of Starmer and put the Conservatives on the right footing. Thank you, Simon, for that. He's an incredibly... Tom Tugendhat is also a very nice man. He's a very clever man. He's a very efficient man. And I wonder whether... you know that kind of extra X factor thing that you sort of need as a leader? And I hate saying this because it shouldn't be this. It should be who is the best based on all of the things that Simon just mentioned and others. But it... You know, when you're going up against Nigel Farage, for example, in a debate, who has that uncanny knack of just mesmerising an audience, that's now the bar, really. Now, whether you like it or not, whether you like Nigel Farage or not, that's the bar. That's where it's been set. You can't change that anymore. It's forever in that place, and everybody is almost judged by that. And if you don't reach it, then Farage kind of sort of wins the arguments, as it were. Brad's in Essex on this point. Brad, welcome to the programme. Nice to have you with us. What are you thinking?
Oh, hi, Ian. Thanks for taking my call. Great show.
Pleasure.
Always listening to you.
Thank you.
With all this that's going on, I'm really concerned about the push towards the digital ID. I think that the way that the government are cozying up to the Chinese government, it leaves us all very at risk in a huge way, don't you think?
Yes. Yeah, I think it really does. I mean, the tech for personal ID, digital ID rather, you have to take an educated guess that it's probably going to come out of China, right?
Absolutely. So you haven't got to be a brain surgeon to work that one out, haven't you?
Not really. And it's interesting, when you start to hear, and we've talked about it a lot today, how connected and actually reliant we are on China. It's not about, you know, every time we get something from Amazon, and I'm sure you're the same, Brad, you look at if you're buying something that's not important, paper clips or something, it's always come from China. Always.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Everything is on there. Great call. Brad, lovely to have you with us. I know you're a first-time caller. We'll speak again, I hope. Thank you for that. This one comes from Colin, referenced the climate. Colin Harris says, here's a clue to what impacts our climate the most. It's a big, round, bright thing that comes out at daybreak if you're lucky enough to live in places where they get summer. Wonderful show, it. Yeah, the sun, that's the bloody sun that did it, wasn't it? Every time we thought there was something else going on, it was the old sunshine. 0344 499 1000. Back with you. More comment on the way this is talk. In this situation, if you think about the Angela Rayner situation where she had to resign, you looked at Peter Mandelson, his resignation, you've seen the same pattern, which is somebody who doesn't step in and grip these things. He lets them run, and it's down to others then to apply so much pressure that in the end he steps back and caves in, and that's just, I'm afraid, not a very good quality in somebody who's meant to be leading our country.
Well, it really isn't. It's quite disturbing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Before the news, by the way, the voice of doom, it's the mystery voice, the political mystery voice. Let's have a listen to who it is.
Because it's based on a deception.
But who is it, if that makes sense? Some of the guesses: Tim Loughton, Peter Barnes, no. Frank Dobson, Daniel Hannan, Dominic Grieve, David Cameron. Can we read it again, Sam?
Because it's based on a deception.
It's definitely not David Cameron. Sebastian Coe, no. Kenneth Baker, Ed Davey, Dennis Thatcher, Andrew Bridgen. It's none of those. In fact, we did not get a right answer, which means it rolls over to tomorrow. We'll bring it to you again at around about 2:45. Meantime, we're talking about a lot of stuff here. Net zero is on the agenda. China is on the agenda. We're talking tech with Sean Keach from The Sun in just a few moments as well. Net zero has been a big one this afternoon. Let's get a word on that. It's a voice note from Mark in Essex.
This net zero thing, it's not the amount of carbon we produce, it's the amount of people we produce. And the amount of people are too many for the size of the planet and all the resources that are on it. We cut down too many forests, build too many houses. You know, we are ruining this planet because of how many people there are, not because of the amount of carbon we produce. And if we could stop producing carbon tomorrow, we would still destroy the planet. It's just a big scam.
And the problem, I suppose, I hear what Mark's saying, is that if we had fewer people, because we're told in this country, and I think there's many other, I think Italy has got a real problem with the birth rate problem. So if you want to retain your current levels of output, which aren't great in this country at the moment, but if you wanted to at least retain it and increase it, you need more people, apparently. How would that work? Peter is in Lancashire on the big climate issue. Are you feeling doomed, Peter?
No, not doomed at all.
Glad to hear it. You've given me hope for the future.
Yeah, I think it's all a bit of a nonsense, to be honest. We all know the climate's always changed and always will change.
Mm-hmm.
However, have humans got anything to do with it? No. But my point really was, I said to the researcher, was the doomers talk about temperature increase, 1.5 over the last century.
Yep.
But what is Earth's correct temperature? So they're assuming it's 1.5 via the modelling, but are we too cold? Are we too warm?
Yeah,
what should it be? What shouldn't it be? So,
and of course, the temperatures are. I mean, this might sound like a naive point because I'm not a geologist or a climatologist, but you know, obviously the temperatures are different in different parts of the globe, right? They're very different, very different affair in the Arctic than it is in the south of Spain.
Correct, but what is, for argument's sake, Spain's correct temperature?
Yeah.
No one will ever give you. You know, if it was an arbitrary, it should be 15 degrees across the globe, averaged out. Well, okay, but no one will ever give you that information. So they can talk about temperature increase, but never ever give you a baseline to work off.
Yeah. Where does it go? Where does it go, though? This whole debate. Where do we find ourselves in? I don't know, 10 years' time, Peter.
Well, when everyone's run out of everyone else's money.
Yeah.
It's a massive tax Ponzi scheme.
Well, the amount of money going into this, and I know that we keep using this phrase today that all roads lead to China, but they seem to be the chief recipients of all of this.
Yeah, and it's definitely a tax redistribution wealth system.
Yeah,
because it's all the money that the layman on the street that you and I pay for, net zero in our bills, etc., is only going up. It's not going down.
Yep.
And I spoke to a lady yesterday, and we were talking about the winter fuel allowance. And I was saying, have you ever thought about how ridiculous the winter fuel allowances? And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, the fact that you need a winter fuel allowance is the fact that gas and electric are already too expensive.
Yeah. 100%.
If we drilled for oil and gas and brought them down, you wouldn't need subsidies.
It's literally that, right? I mean, it's literally the fact that wherever it comes from, whatever technology someone's going to throw forward, whether it's some kind of hydro-based system, whether it's a flipping windmill on the roof, whatever it is, you're absolutely bang on. The only reason we have winter fuel allowance is because it costs too much.
Correct. Yeah, and if you drilled for oil and I mean, that lady that was on before was talking about Trump doesn't care about the environment and he's going to drill. No, what he does is he cares about cheap energy.
Yeah.
And cheap energy brings bills down, and that then brings transport costs down, brings food down, etc., etc., etc.
Peter, it's a great call. Thank you, mate. Nice to speak. That's Peter in Lancashire, 0344 499 1000. Gary in Bolton says climate change, net zero, money grab. Many people making that point. You asked what will be next after net zero. It's called bankruptcy, says another one here. Bobby says, I always wondered, Greta tell us we're all going to roast and die. Why I find that hard to believe is simple. This planet's always evolved, so instead of pigeons, we get hummingbirds. Instead of pears, we get pineapples. And thank God we won't need winter fuel allowance because it's a Spanish climate all year round, says Bob. And I also rather think it's a kind of weird part of our evolution, right? If you think, I always think about where the Victorians were when they didn't have any kind of heating. They might have lit a fire if they were lucky to be able to afford the wood or coal or whatever it was. But clearly nobody had central heating for many, many years until that all kicked in. And they would have had conversations, I'm sure, at some point. They'd have sat around the old tavern having a flagon of ale going, one day, people's homes will be nicely heated, everything will be fine. And here we are, despite all the things that we can do, you've got smartphones that are capable of the most extraordinary things. We have Wi-Fi and internet that connects us up in a way that would have looked like witchcraft 20 years ago. Elon Musk can not only release a rocket almost every day of the week, he can make it reverse back into its pod. And yet we can't cheaply heat homes. I mean, doesn't that seem all shades of flipping weird? Can't heat a house. Well, we can, but it costs a fortune. You must have noticed it. Now it's got a bit chilly at night or in the morning. You whack the temperature up and you look at your smart meter and it's going like Billy-O. You think there's somebody down at the Lecky company having a laugh with you. Somebody fiddling with this at the back. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk technology. There's a lot to talk about with technology. Sean Keach is Head of Science and Technology at The Sun. He's going to join us in a few moments right here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 25 to 4. A little bit of breaking news. The first convictions based on evidence from the Post Office capture accounting software, which the organisation used before the faulty Horizon system, have been referred to the Court of Appeal. This is the Criminal Cases Review Commission has announced. So the first convictions based on evidence from the Post Office's accounting software. We'll keep up with that story. Let's talk a bit about technology. Sean Keach is with us, Head of Science and Technology at The Sun, of course. I know it's not on our list, but it's been going through my head. We've been talking about the Chinese influence a lot today, yes. Sean, and you can't really, when you talk tech, you can't get away from the Chinese influence because it's everywhere. Even in, like, you know, okay, this is an iPhone, it's American, but there's a lot of Chinese stuff in there as well. I mean, there's no way around it. And you must have been in a driverless car.
I have been in driverless cars, and it is very spooky to watch. And they're coming to the UK. The Waymo cars are coming here.
Well, that's what I was thinking about,
It's a very weird experience. And even in semi-driverless cars, like, have you ever been in a Tesla when it's in this sort of semi-autonomous mode? It's a very strange experience. And it's that thing, if you sort of have to trick your mind and remind yourself that it is actually safer than human drivers. And, you know, ultimately, if every car was driverless, it would probably bring down road accidents quite significantly. But there's something about the idea, I think, of a robot killing you feels worse than you accidentally crashing into a tree yourself. This, you know, having the autonomy of crashing yourself.
But why do we
better.
need them? That's what I can't get my head around. We don't really need them.
You know what? I think that probably the best use is summoning your car to you, because so often I'd like to walk somewhere and then have the car turn up at the end of it, and then I can drive away. But you're always trapped on doing these circular walks, and you have to find a way to get back to yourself. I think if I could just have my car come to the end, that would be lovely.
What was the film? What was the Sam? You might know. What was the film with the beetle that's a car that has its own mind? Herbie. That's it. Herbie, the white Volkswagen thing.
I had Brum came to my mind initially.
You can whistle your Herbie did all sorts of caper.
There you go. It's been invented.
It's way ahead of its game, wasn't it? Herbie goes bananas.
The person who created that should sue Tesla.
Yeah. But I just don't know why we need them. That's my... I mean, if you look at a driverless car now, if there was a driverless car sitting outside, the people behind the tech would go, that particular model, as you see it now, it's very basic, that's 200,000 quid's worth of car. You think, why have you bothered to build it? For what reason?
Some people just hate driving. I love driving, so the idea worries me. I like getting a drive, no matter where it is. I'd much prefer to drive over planes, trains, anything. But some people just don't like it. So I suppose.
Yeah, it may be. Yeah, well, little pods turning up at your house, just taking you from A to B, so you don't have to, you know, do anything.
Haunting.
Well, it goes into that conspiracy territory, doesn't it? Because, you know, we've got, you know, during COVID, we kind of realised that actually, although it was horrendous to be locked down, food could be delivered, your entertainment arrives on a multi-streaming platform, your TV screen doesn't look like the one your nan had, it looks like something that the Odeon own, and all of it's there. Even your exercise routine could be done via an app on a video sharing website. Everything was there. Didn't need to go anywhere, and if you do need to go anywhere, you whistle, like you say, and a flipping pod shows up outside your house.
You have to tap your digital ID. The government will say, you can't go there, you have to go here instead.
You don't need to own a car because you won't own anything and you'll be happy.
There you go. Subscription fees.
There it is.
£200 a month.
Maybe I could make a documentary on this. Let's talk about, talking of, you know, the future, AI and what is happening. ChatGPT to unleash a flood of AI smut as a ban on adult content is set to be reversed.
Yes, very weird story, but it's strange because there's so much fear about what AI will do, but sort of bizarrely, the tech companies are pulling back in a way from being so restrictive about what you can do in AI. So OpenAI, which runs ChatGPT, has basically said you're going to be able to use have adult interactions with the chatbot. So you can, you know, create a erotica, have adult conversations with the chatbot from December once they introduce age gating. So it'll only be for verified adults. It's not going to be, you know, kids can pop online and have strange conversations with chatbots. It's meant to just be for adults. I mean, certainly people will get around this. But yeah, they're rolling back on it. They say that they want to treat adults like adults.
Yeah.
So I guess a bit of freedom. And it's interesting. I was actually speaking to Google about their AI image creator a few weeks ago, and they were saying that they're really pulling back from the whole copyright issue because they don't want to assume knowledge about the user. So, for instance, you know, if I create an image of me wearing like I don't know, like a Nike T-shirt and said, you know, I've got a collab with Nike, they would create the image because they don't know whether I do have a collab with Nike or not, and so they don't want to assume too much. So they're really trying to shift responsibility onto the user for what you're creating with the AI, rather than them being the sort of arbiters.
And I guess when it comes to issues around adult content, and whether adult content is because it's pornographic or whether it's because it's violent, whatever, what will concern most parents is the, you know, ID checks and all that goes with it. And will that be at such a stage that that won't be a concern? Is that the direction of travel, or will kids still be able to get a sneaky, you know, picture of some nipulation if they need to? I just invented that word, by the way.
It's a great word. Shakespeare invented a lot of words.
Have you never been to nipulation.com? I'm not kidding you. Yeah.
You could create it with AI. No, so they're going to be age gating it in December. So it will be something. It'll be one of those systems again where you have to, you know, prove that you're an adult with a license or with a photograph. So it'll be that sort of system. I think that the bigger fear is probably the mental health issue, because we've seen, you know, examples of people having serious mental health consequences. There was someone who OpenAI is actually being sued at the moment because the parents of this 16-year-old think that the ChatGPT chat logs have evidence of sort of giving him advice around suicide, and the young boy did kill himself in the end. And so they're being sued for that. Now that trial has to still play out ultimately, but OpenAI has done a lot of work recently on trying to improve the mental health features in the app. So if you start talking about issues related to depression, it will direct you to professional help rather than just sort of weighing in and advising you on its own.
Yeah, it's kind of what a weird world we're living in talking about this. And also AI connected on this story as well, Sean. Pupils fearing that AI is eroding their ability to study, when, you know, many said it will be the very thing that assists your ability to study. What's going on here?
It's super interesting. So Oxford University Press, they've done this big report on AI in schools, and they surveyed 2,000 students, and they're saying that just 2% of students between 13 and 18 aren't using AI at all. So 2% aren't using AI. That means the overwhelming majority of kids at school are using AI for their studies, and a lot of them are really worried about it. They're scared that it's not allowing them to concentrate. They're scared that it's not allowing them to think creatively. They don't feel like they have ownership of the work that they're producing when it's with AI. And then ultimately you have the kids who aren't using it, who then feel like, are they going to be falling behind? Now it's very difficult. It's a difficult problem for schools because it's a bit like the calculator. You know, there was a time when calculators were seen as cheating, but now you're allowed calculators in maths exams because ultimately you enter the world of work and everyone's using calculators. So you can't, you know, of course, you don't want to learn not using calculators. And it's the same with, you know, when laptops were introduced and iPads. And it's a similar story now. We need to train our kids to know how to use AI, but also it can't be at the expense of them thinking creatively. So I think there's probably going to need to be a push to have some exams just done purely writing on pen and paper, so there's no reliance, but you also need part of the curriculum that will teach them how to use AI as well. But it can't all be AI because they won't get the critical thinking skills. You know, it's all well and good being able to edit the content that AI produces, but you know, it's going to be a limited pool of creativity if it's just all AI.
But is there going to be a point when the critical thinking skills are just not needed, when someone's going to say it out loud and go, look, we can keep arguing this, isn't it great that you can solve an algebraic equation and you don't have to press the cosine button on your calculator to get the answer you want for something, you can do it in your head. Someone's going to go, it doesn't matter because we've got computers that do it.
I think it will still matter with...
I think it does matter, by the way.
With putting out creative content. I mean, I think people are drawn to stuff that's produced by humans, and if you imagine a world in 20 years where everything was produced by AI, it would all feel the same. And I think you're still going to have that demand for human-generated content because people want to watch other humans. You know, you don't want to watch robots playing sport, you want to watch real people playing sport. So I think people will always want to connect with humans, and I think then that will reverse drive the desire for humans to produce content, and then in turn that will mean that in schools we need to teach people to, you know, create content.
A mate of mine firmly believes that AI, which, you know, people are talking about the sort of, it's frightening, not necessarily in a sinister way, but it's unbelievable in that sense of what it can do. And, you know, when it comes to AI and what it can do already, we're kind of only on week one, you know, of the journey of AI. That's the bit that really gets me. And my mate thinks that actually what's going to happen, all of these predictions of it's going to take over our life, etc., he thinks that there's going to be another phase of AI when somebody kind of extrapolates a kind of almost a superior use of it in a different way. It will become a very different thing. It won't operate in the same. You can have your fun with it and, you know, draw your pictures and get a watermark taken off your photograph, which is what Sam out there has just done very impressively. Well, Sam didn't do anything, actually, just asked somebody else to do it on a phone, and it did it. And I did something at home recently with Photoshop. Almost like, why would you need Photoshop when it did what it just did? But yeah, he thinks there'll be another phase to it, which will become, you know, a more apparent use of it, and people will start battling with it as well, because people will say, well, actually, no, I've got this use for it or that use for it.
Well, there's this whole idea of agentic AI, which is when the AI can act as an agent on your behalf. So at the moment, we sit at computers and we tap in commands that, you know, add a hat to me in this photo, and it does it, and it's great. But, you know, you're ultimately still driving everything it does. In the future, you can have agentic AI that will go off and do things on its own. So we're having a conversation, maybe our glasses are recording what we're saying, and then afterwards, maybe my AI has booked in a meeting that we talked about, and actually it's pulled up 3 things that it thinks you said wrong, and it's warning me that you lied to me on, you know, national TV or whatever. And so it's doing things on its own, and maybe we talked about that I'm tired, so it's booked me in for a massage after work, and so the AI is acting without me having to drive its every decision. That's sort of the next step.
Is it making any money for companies yet? Because I keep reading that it's losing money.
I mean, it's obviously generating some revenue, because there are a lot of companies that are paying big fees for very advanced versions of the AIs, and then some regular users are paying subscriptions as well. And then Mark Zuckerberg has recently launched this Vibes app, which is a feed of AI content that the model is advertising, so you see ads between the videos. But ultimately, a lot of the money is just in investment. People are pouring money into it because it's, you know, the stock prices of these companies are going up so dramatically. It's a weird one. I think a good example of it is the Sora 2 from OpenAI, which is this AI that basically generates very, very realistic videos. It's kind of shocking. You probably listeners and watchers have already seen it on TikTok. You see these stunningly realistic videos, but ultimately they cost the companies a lot of money. And how do they make money from it? Because, you know, you've got people logging on, consuming vast amount of electricity and water to generate effectively what are memes. And you know, they're giving this away for free.
They look like Pixar quality, don't they?
And you know, it's not costing the users anything. It's costing these companies a lot of money. And sure, it looks great, and you know, shareholders will be like, wow, this is amazing. But ultimately, what's the use? Because you have creative directors who are saying, well, we can't use this for movies. It's just too difficult to edit with. It's not high enough quality. And so, you know, what is the use for that? How do you monetize that? And it can't just be advertising. It can't just be Mark Zuckerberg's feed of random AI videos, because it's not a good model. It's just rubbish, isn't it? And who wants to watch that? People want to see humans interacting. I still think it's like podcasts. You can generate a very compelling AI podcast today that sounds like 2 humans talking, but I would have no interest in listening to it, because it's not real humans. They have no lived experience.
Does it become interesting eventually? Does the next generation, who aren't as discerning as that, go, this is really interesting, these 2 guys?
I actually heard a really interesting talk the other day, and the guy said that he gave the example of chess, and chess, AI has been brilliant at chess for years, and computers playing chess are infinitely better than humans now. Humans cannot beat these chess computers. And yet no one wants to watch 2 computers play chess, and chess is having the best time ever. Record chess profits, because people will still want to watch humans play chess. Even though robots are better at chess, doesn't matter. You want to watch a human.
But that's very much based on you're watching the manifestation of somebody's intelligence.
Yes.
In terms of their capability.
And it's aspirational. You think, well, maybe I could be a chess genius. I don't think I can, but, you know, it's nice to dream.
Let's go to this. I think this might be your best story to date, Sean, the human washing machine.
Oh, God.
What is this, the human washing machine?
I just looked at my notes because I want to make sure it's actually called the human washer of the future, and it's this Japanese gadget from this Japanese company that are showing off at the Osaka sort of future tech fair, and it's basically this pod that you get into and it washes you. So it's meant to be an alternative
to a shower, isn't it?
To a shower, yeah. It's meant to be. It's been a lazy man's shower.
Been using them for years.
So you hop into it. In 2 or 3 minutes, it cleans you. It sort of pressure washes you with these sort of microscopic bubbles. It has a lovely screen and some music, so you watch like gentle waves lapping, and you hear the sound of the shore.
Off, right?
Yes, you do. You still have to
I thought it was going to do. I
hop
thought
in
it was
there.
going to kind of wash you and your clothes, go up
Sadly
your
not.
shoot a bit of a hose up your trouser leg so that you're nice and clean.
And steam.
Does your clothes, presses them, and out you come.
No, so
Wallace and
it's all
Gromit
temperature
style,
controlled. It washes you. It's fills it up to chest height. It knows to stop and not drown you. And
Love
apparently they've tested it on 1,000 people. They're all loving it. It's going to be in 6 hotels in Japan. Maybe it will come to the UK one day. Who knows?
You never know.
I think it's quite a good idea because sometimes at the end of the day, when it's time to shower, I'm just like, oh God, I wish I could just get in a pod and have this done for me. It's
There you go. It's if it can do your nails and everything, that'll give you a bit of a facial.
Dresses you at the end.
Nothing wrong with that.
This is what we need AI to solve, not rubbish
They're
making
the
videos.
kind of things. Yeah, I'd be buying into all of that. Couple of quick ones to finish on. Don't risk ignoring life-saving iPhone features. There's quite a lot on the iPhone.
Yes.
Some people don't realise are there, but they are important, aren't they?
There are so many good iPhone features that people completely miss. And we've done a big piece on it on The Sun about all the iPhone features that you need to be looking out for that are life-saving. One of them is this feature called Check-In, which I actually think is so valuable. And so if you go into Messages and you press the little plus icon as if you were going to add a photo, there's an option there called Check-In. And so it lets you do 2 things. One is an option to let a friend track your journey. And so it's not just like WhatsApp where, they're seeing your location. They'll get to see your endpoint. They'll get to see your progress. They can see how much signal you've got, how much battery life you've got, when you last unlocked your iPhone, when you last took your Apple Watch off. And so the idea is that if you stop moving for a certain amount of time, they'll be alerted and then they can check in with you. And then if you reach your destination, then they'll be alerted as well. And then there's another one, which is also the check-in feature that's time-based. So you say like, check in with this person after an hour. So that's handy if you're going on a date maybe with someone new you haven't met before, and it gives you that peace of mind that if you stop responding and you don't check in after an hour, and that person, then can see all that information about you, where you are, where
you
your
might
phone
have just
was
fallen
last
hopelessly
turned
in
off.
love and don't want to.
Yeah, you might
speak
have,
to
and
you.
then they ruin the date.
Person ruined the date. I got somebody checking.
But I think if your kids are out and you want that peace of mind, they can set this feature up. There's also another feature, and I don't know whether it's fair to call it life-saving, but it's very handy, and a lot of people don't know about it. So if you're, say, on the London Tube, you tap in with your phone, contactless payments. One, you don't need to unlock your phone for that. It can work even when you're with your phone locked, which is really handy. But it also works if your phone is dead. So if your phone has ran out of battery and you tap on the contactless pad on the London Tube or on the New York subway, it will still let you through, even if your phone has no battery life. So your phone has died, and it's a way of getting home. So it's really, really handy.
Very briefly, Sean, major UK network offering free food.
What's 3 customers. If you're 3 customers, great deal. But it runs out at the end of October, so don't miss it. But you can get 25% off Toby Carveries for up to 8 people, which is pretty good.
That's
25% people,
That's
8
a quarter.
people. Yeah, it is. And then also you can get £5 curries at loads of curry restaurants across the UK. Indians, Thais, Japanese, including Giggling Squid, which is quite a nice time.
I like the Giggling Squid.
£5 curry, not bad.
Sean, thank you. Sean Keach is Head of Technology and Science at The Sun. Thank you to him. Back with you, coming next on Talk.
given that direct extracts from the Labour Party manifesto have now appeared in the Deputy National Security Advisor's witness statement, this makes a manure heap smell positively floral and delicious. I was bobbing up and down throughout the whole of PMQs, and the question I wanted to ask, can the Prime Minister confirm, is China a national security threat, yes or no?
Yeah.
And regrettably, I was not called and therefore was unable to ask the question, but that is the question that needs answering.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Of a double espresso in a particularly vigorous game of ping pong. There we go.
You've probably come back from a break there thinking, what the heck is going on?
Yes,
that was Jeremy Kyle doing a kind
don't give
doing
away.
something.
Yes.
Which we can't talk about.
How are you?
When will we find out what that meant?
In about 5 minutes. Oh, that's good.
5 minutes.
Finn's terrified of the next 4 minutes of my broadcasting career.
Yeah.
Because he let slip something. But I'm gonna prove that I'm a good man. Don't look, he's terrified. Look at him. Look, he's hiding.
Well, he should be.
Not a word
after what he said.
Did you hear it?
I heard it through because the door. You had your foot in the door.
I mean, I'm not saying I disagree with it, but I'm not saying I disagree. But no, certainly.
He could have been bang on.
Very good. I mean, he could have jumped board and got the point. You know, he could have. Yeah. I think he would have gone through a few humps along the way, though, don't you?
I think we might be onto something there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. How are you?
We'll nail it eventually.
It's getting better and better. That'll be another notch on the old bedpost, won't it?
Carry on,
Ian Collins and Jeremy Kyle managed to fill 5 minutes talking complete and utter rubbish.
Nobody
I've done it
knew
for
what
30
the hell.
years, mate.
I know. Yeah, same here. So listen, what is going on? Lots going on. Net zero is going on. We're all going to die by, I don't know, probably 5:30 or something.
But you see, I don't know about you. You've got younger kids. I've got old kids. You've
got younger ones as well.
I know, but I say to them the same thing. I say, it's not my problem. I'm sorry. I genuinely believe we've enough.
Yeah.
I'll be dead. But there's enough going on in our country, isn't there?
Yeah.
Then why is a strange man waving at you like that?
That'll be Rory. Yeah.
Is he still alive?
He is, yeah. Still around. Rory's still around.
Rory,
yeah.
Didn't realise.
He's going to go, I'm going to have a chat with you, Collins. He's going to have to run to London Bridge Station with me. That's the bit he doesn't know about.
Yeah. Have you seen him run? Lots of stuff going on. I'm furious about this grooming gang inquiry that's just been pushed to the back. I think that's absolutely another appalling example of this government. We can talk about tax rises, we can talk about the lies there, and we can talk about the Chinese spy trial collapse, and we can talk about all that.
Yes.
Still, the institutions in this country are prepared to just walk all over this whole thing. These kids were abused and nobody seems to want to do anything about it.
It is quite extraordinary how that seems to have taken a backseat to the kind of mechanics and the politicisation
and
of whatever's going on.
said, I don't care what Donald says, I'm not interested. I'm very keen on net zero.
Tax the ships.
The what?